Now, safe zones are interesting. They're not that hard to do, but they require you to do a bit of toning first, okay? The best and fastest toning to use are 12 and 1, all right? They're new words. They take a while to get used to, but they're in there and they're encoded in the DNA template. So if you can get used to them, they'll be the fastest. There's also other ones that can come from your own Maharic shield. They won't be quite as powerful as far as running the grid codes, because remember, the tribal shield has the core fire letter sequences that correspond to the planetary grids directly. Okay? So these frequencies are the ones that go with those grids, as well as the core of your DNA template. You'll get other frequencies on top of those. The Elohai song, the song of the soul. I was tempted to go into that, but I don't know. I didn't. There was a space. I felt this before when a group could go up into that without getting awkward feeling like, what am I supposed to do? I'm not quite there yet. I didn't feel that it was going to work if I tried to take it from what we were doing. I was afraid it was going to break up the frequencies we make, because I knew we were making some good connections with the tribal shield. Now, to hear the soul song, that's a little different. This is something we could do here, but I think it would probably be better if you practiced it yourself, because people tend, especially if you're not like family, you don't know each other really well, you tend to, hold yourself a certain way, and you don't like to, go playing with, it might be embarrassing to just play with my voice and see what comes out. What I'm asking you to do is when you're home, or when you're alone, or when you're in the shower, or someplace where you don't have to worry about anybody hearing you but you and your crystal self, know that you have a soul song. You have a soul song every moment. And what's wonderful about it is it changes all the time. Yet, within a cycle of change, it always comes back. It may be a 12-year cycle before you ever hear that same set of sounds coming out again, but it cycles. It's as if there are 50,000 different tunes on that jukebox, and you start with one and you cycle through them all, and you say, geez, every time I do this thing and try to let my soul sing, it comes out with something different. Never knows the same song. It actually does. There's sets of frequencies that the soul is stimulating, and they go in cycles. And once you finish one round, then there will be another round of it until you have all those frequencies open in the body. The reason it's important to explore the concept of a soul song, and a soul song is something, it's a song that you don't tell it what to do. You let it do what it needs to do. If it needs to go low, you go low. If it needs to go high, if it needs to go off tune, let it do that too. Because sometimes, if you let something go off tune long enough, it rebalances itself and brings itself back into tune. Sometimes it just needs to get the sediment out of the network, And you may actually find, if you thought you were a person that never could carry a tune, you may be surprised if you keep trying to carry one and you keep getting it where it's not. You may just find all of a sudden it starts to go on an upswing. Or all of a sudden, oh wait, I'm finding new ranges here, new frequencies. That means you're opening frequencies in the body. It's very important if you're going to do grid work, and do it seriously, and I mean grid work on your own body or grid work on the planet, you need to understand and respect the power of sound. We're taught in this society to control our sound at all costs. We're taught to keep our mouths shut all through school. We're taught to speak only in certain ways and not in others, which at times is a very good thing to teach somebody. We're taught to be uncomfortable with just free expression through the voice. If we can undo that, not to the point where we go and say anything we want to anybody and offend people, it's not about that. But if we can realize our voice needs to sing, our soul needs to come out, our fifth chakras tend to be very, very constricted in this society, in this global society, but particularly like civilized nations, as they call them, like America and Europe and things where people are not. It's not third world countries. Actually, people in third world countries that are doing tribal dances, and they're hooting and howling, and they're doing runs across the plains, and they're going on walkabouts. Who's the civilized people here? These people know how to use their energy in their bodies, at least to some degree. They're not doing it all right either. There's certain things that they get caught up in with the astral experiences, where they get manipulated and stuff because they open their fields to things because they don't know how to protect them on those levels. So they're not perfect either. It's not a perfect thing. I'm not saying that Western civilization is losing it and we should go be totally tribal. there are advantages to both sides. But if we could learn from the people who are, they actually have, it's a privilege in a certain way. We look at it from Western point of view and say, oh, well, gee, you know, the tribal people, they live such poor lives, they don't have stuff. They, you know, they live out in the woods and jungles, and they don't have cars, and, you know, they don't have, like, bathtubs and 6 different kinds of soap in the closet, and, you know, towels from the most expensive stores that are nice and soft. Okay, now, who is really imprisoned here? Usually, people that live in tribal situations, as long as there's enough food, just basic food to go around, they do not have to worry about getting in their car and getting on the highway 2 hours early so they can get to work through all the traffic jams, and then sitting behind a desk for at least 7 hours, probably more like 10, for not enough money, and then go home and then have to deal with not having enough money to pay the bills on their fancy house. Who is doing it right or wrong here? You know what I mean? We can learn from each other. People that live in a tribal situation, there are certain advantages they probably love to experience. That we have soft towels would probably be a real rush, you know, when you're used to using, you know, rough blankets that you made out of, you know, you wove out of some kind of reed. A nice towel would feel good. Well, just like that might feel good to them, and it would be a good experience for the people in tribes, it would be a good experience for us to begin to allow that tribal part of us, allow our tribeness to start coming through. Allow ourselves to sing, allow sound to move through us. Sound and dance are very important. That doesn't mean you have to go out to the nightclubs, because really the type of dance you get there is more like astral field attachment. It's like astral dating service without your permission. You know what I mean? You know, it's really funny. Try this sometime. If you ever play with, like, turning on the astral vision, where you just try to see with your eyes closed what might you see, and the little bit frequency up. If you're ever in a bar, just try to see what you see. It'll blow your mind. And it'll really scare them when they see you seeing them. There are things that hang out in the astral field everywhere, but particularly in those kind of atmospheres, they're kind of very strange. So I'm not suggesting, like, you know, go out to the nightclubs and do that kind of dance and hoot and howl and get drunk, and, you know, that can be very, very non-useful to you. But if you could take some time and allow yourself to play with your voice. Your voice is a part of your power. The power of decree, the power to say, I am that I am, or I say and so it is the power that you have the right of creation. Words are extremely powerful things. The power of decree is bringing your power back to yourself and realizing that you've had it all along, but your words and your sounds and what you allow sound to do, you are using sound as a manifestation tool. If you're just talking with it but you won't let it sing, you're creating a blockage here. The soul likes to sing, I'll tell you that. From the higher levels, the universe sings. It really does, everything. If you can get an idea of, if you go out in the woods at night, in the summer or in the spring, when you hear all the bugs, little crickets, and the real loud thing, everything is singing to itself and to each other. This is what it sounds like in the higher fields of your own higher identity. Words aren't even used after a certain point. These are linear, three-dimensional processes. You can get much more expression in sound tones that can move and bend. So what I'm asking you to do, if you want to keep your tribal shield activated and alive, these are the key tones, but you need to let your soul sing, because the more you start to open that fifth chakra and the heart chakra are involved with singing, the more you let that come out, the more frequency you'll be able to hold in your body, and the more you will keep that frequency alive in the body. That'll keep your tribal shield activated more often, and you won't have to do that as often. This might actually become fun after a while, once you get used to it and get to play with it. So I think if you're going to create a safe zone, you need to understand the power of sound, because you're not going to create the safe zone with light. Light will be an after effect. It's sound that you're going to create it with. To create a safe zone, you don't need to run. You do have to have your tribal shield activated, but if you happen to be doing the tribal shield stuff and working with this, like, 2 days before, the tribal shield tends to stay active for a while. I mean, even before with the small transmission, it was going to be active for a couple of weeks. And now with the little bit that we did, they said that's like a 4 weeks worth of energy boost. That's a lot. I think maybe 3 days, 3 hours, But they'd stay active for quite a while. What you need to do is, if you have your tribal shield activated, you've done it recently, you've been playing with the sound tones. And you can also ask your Christos level to help. If you do the Maharic seal, the basic Maharic seal, which means if you're going to do any technique, that's the one you need to do, because that's what protects your fields, and that's what starts to reset your 12-strand DNA template to its natural order. So if there's mutations in there, it's the Maharic seal that'll begin the purging of them and resetting them. So if you really can't stand doing technique and there's only one you're going to do, do that one. But with this, if you have your tribal shield activated by playing with the tones, like, even if it's a couple days before, even a week before, you don't have to go through that on the site that you want to make the safe zone. You need to use a couple, though, of the suffixes. They're the keys. They're like openers. They're frequency openers. They open DNA templates. They also open planetary grid lines. Now, there are ways to calibrate combinations of numbers, but you don't have to know how to do that yet. That's going to come later. I don't even have the transmissions on that, but there's some really sophisticated programs you can use by combining the different numbers of the tribes and then using the tones that go with them, and then there's actually symbols that go with each of them. It can be very as complex as you want it to be, but we're going for simple right now. I'm just learning this too. But we can take every third tone. So 1, 2, 3. That's the Amika-san. You have Do. The Do sound. Okay, so you have 1. Then 4, 5, 6. So you have 3, 6. You have Yum. Yum. Do. Yum. And 7, 8, 9. Ki. Ki. So you have Do. Yum. Ki. And then 10, 11, 12. And then you're back to Ra. So you can do it that way. It's best to do it, okay, there's a correspondence here with how the stargates are structured on the Cathara grid, that 12 tree grid that looks like the tree of life thing. There's a correspondence to this. If you look on the 12, I don't have the diagram of it right here, but if you look at the Cathara grid, running up the left side you have 3, 6, 9. Running up the right side you have 4, 7, 10. And running up the middle, you have 1, 2, 5, 8, 11, 12. Okay? That's the middle pillar that actually has the power to move either the other sides. But there are some very special frequencies that go with the 3, 6, 9 combination that have to do with the path of, it's actually, the way I've seen it taught, they actually reverse it. The path of true mercy is the path up through the 3, 6, 9, because they are the guardian gates. Okay, it goes right down to stargates. Who's controlling what stargates? Well, the 3, 6, 9s are still going up to 11 and 12 are still under control of guardian races, Emerald Covenant races, Elohai and those guys. When you go up in the universal stargates, you're up to 4. It's controlled by Nibiru. 5 is half controlled by Nibiru, actually Anunnaki that were from the Nibiru that are in the Pleiades now. You have 6 is okay on our side. You have 7, that's the Arcturian gate. That's controlled by Nibiru and Buddies, Arcturians. So you have, this is the path, the one going up on the right. That, yeah, they want you to go up that way. Sure, they'll tell you it's easy. Yeah, right. It's like walking into a net. So when you're using the frequencies that go with those gates, you're better off using the ones that are clear, because it's going to entangle you temporarily until you really can hold your Maharic seal good and stuff. You don't need to play with the gates that are on the 4, 7, 10 side. So take the 3, the 6, the 9, and the 12. Play with those for a while. Or even take the middle ones. They're not too bad. So that would be 2, 5, 8, 11, 12. Did I miss any? No, 1, 2, 5, 8, 11, 12. So if you're actually combining frequencies when you do this, and since these tones go with your tribal shield, which goes with the deep coding in the in the templates of the grids, these are your Stargate codes. Those Stargate correlations, using the lineup of how the Stargates are positioned in the universal structure on that Cathara grid, on that 12 tree, would make sense, because you're dealing with the same things. You're dealing with the frequencies that have to do with the DNA template, the grids, and the Stargates. So play with that for a while if you want to. Now, we can use these. You can pick one You can use the whole thing if you want to, but what we're going to do, we're going to use the 3, 6, and 9, and 12, but just the suffixes, just the activation suffixes. So you'd basically run your Maharic seal. So you showed up on a spot and you decide, I want to make this a safe spot. I'll make this a Q zone. Show up on the spot and run your Maharic seal. That doesn't mean you have to go through the 900-year process of it. Okay, if you're working with that process on a tape where you're letting it kind of beam into your brain and you're doing it, you don't have to always do every step of it. As long as you're doing it sometimes where you're imprinting the body with the right way to do it, you can simply imagine the Hierophant symbol, the 6-pointed Star of David in pale silver. Use the breath to run it down into Earth's core. Use the next inhale to bring it up to 12 inches below the feet, the Maharic seal, and push it out. Then use the breath to bring the whole star up to the 14th chakra and link it there. And then watch it pull the pillar up with you. So you can do it really fast. You can throw it down, pull it up, push the shield out, pull it back out, and pull the pillar with you. You have a temporary Maharic seal. It's not going to be as strong, as if you use the other one, but it'll be fine to do a Q site. Okay? Now, to do a Q site, you do that first. And then simply take the combination of suffixes that you're going to use. Here, we're going to use do, ki, ra. Do, ki, ra. Do, ki, ra. Okay, now what do we do with them? Do, ki, ra. First, stand in your power and try to feel the frequency of the Maharic current running through you. This is the Maharata current that you're pulling through, which means you're moving through the Antankarana. Remember we talked about the Antankarana being the 9-dimensional pillar? When you start bringing the Maharata through, you're pushing the Antankarana into temporary activation to bring it through. You first need to feel the current running, and that's simply a breathing process. Breathe it up from the earth, and when you exhale, feel it go up, as if it just took on a life of its own and went up. And then every exhale, bring it more, up to the heart chakra. And when you exhale, it just goes on its own, up. And it's going to circulate in the system. It's actually going to form a figure 8, or an eternity symbol. As it's going to go up, it's going to cross through the chakras, come back down through the heart chakra, and back down. The idea is to get a feel of it in the body, because this is the energy you're going to use to create that safe zone. So if you can hardly feel it, that means you didn't build it enough. That means you're not going to have a very strong safe zone. Okay? So you need to feel it. It's worth it. Even if you sit there and meditate on the site for a while, just while you're bringing up the energy until you feel enough there. Okay, this is a good deposit, because you're depositing something in the grids, right? Once you get the frequency up to where you can, I have some energy here. This should be a good thing to deposit in the grids. That should hold. Okay? Once you do that, then simply you can stand or sit. It's better to stand because you get the full vertical running through the feet, but you can also do it with the bottom on the ground, sitting on the ground. And simply, you can word them or you can sing them, which here we go again, singing these, yeah, right. Do, ki, ra. Do, ki, ra. Do, ki, ra. Any tone you want. Do, ki, ra. Do, ki, ra. Let it be yours. Do, ki, ra. Dom Kira, Dom Kira. And start them a little slower so you can feel the resonance of each one, because that's what you're putting in the grids. Dom Kira, Dom Kira, Dom Kira. Feel this energy moving down, as if the sound is going down your main vertical current into the grids. Feel it moving down your legs and out the bottom of your feet, so the bottom of your feet tingle. Dom Kira, Dom Kira. Try to feel the sound vibrating on the bottom of your feet. Dom Kira. Dom you start to feel other tones come through that are your soul tones, let them come. Now's the time to let them move. Let the Elohi in you sing. Let it move through you. It's you. When you feel that your soul has sung enough of its song, keep going if you want to. But when you feel that your soul is done for now, go back to the Dom Ki Ra as the close. Dom Ki Ra, Dom Ki Ra. And the last one, be very low. Finish doing that at a site. Stay still for a few moments at the site. You've created a still point. Don't move in it yet. Let it set. Because you're setting that still point in the planetary grids. You're giving the earth the gift of a still point of D12 frequency. This is a code that you've set in the grids. And you set it in by letting your soul song come out after the keynotes, after the suffixes. You're setting your signature to it, so you're adding the frequencies that are yours to bring to this planet. You're giving a special gift. You're adding to the healing. And in response, the planetary grids are sending up a co-resonance. You probably won't hear it at first, but if you sit in a quiet space, particularly if you do it in nature, in a park or in the woods or something. If you do this procedure that we just did, and then you sit in the still point afterward, very quietly, you will begin at some point, eventually, you will start to hear what's called the back song. The earth will send a song back to you. It's sending frequencies back to you in response to what you sent to it. And if you're really still and quiet and get yourself really relaxed, you will be able to begin to hear as if a song, a frequency is playing in your own head. It's a back song that comes back from the planetary grids when you have set in a piece of the Christos template. That back song will help to heal your grids. It will help to move and shift things to a higher level inside of you. This is only the beginning of learning how to use the power of the sound and the power of the DNA template and the power of the earth grids. And every one of them run on one thing that's the same, and that's love. Unconditional Christos love. We teach a lot of technical things, in our paradigm. We teach you the science, because without the science, it's like trying to swim across the ocean with no arms. It's going to be very difficult. You have to kick really hard. But just because we teach the science does not mean that it's not built on love. And it is absolutely heart-centered, but it is the most highest heart-centered. It is the Christos heart-centered. What we just did right here was an example. Now remember, we used a three-tone, the threes, the 3, 6, 9, and 12 combination. They're master activators, okay? You'll have a copy of these if you haven't written them down. There will be, this sheet will be available for you guys tomorrow, so you can have a copy. But using those combinations, and you may want to experiment later. You could feel that you want to use other combinations. But if you're going to use the, now you can use 4 or you can use 7 or you can have 10, but if you're going to use a 4, 7, 10 combination, make sure you've got your Maharic seal up strong, okay? Because that'll just open some of the grids that are, that are not fully safe to open right now. It shouldn't hurt you, but if you don't have a strong Maharic seal, you may pick up some astral stuff that you don't want to pick up with that. All right, so we're just saying basically, we recommend the left side of the pillar, the left pillar and the thing, the 3, 6, 9, 12. But play with it. Don't be afraid of 4, 7, and 10. Just try not to use them in that combination. Go 10, 4, 7 if you want to, but the 4, 7, 10 is the coding for the right side of the Cathara grid, which is the stargates running up on the right. So just try to stay away from that sequence of combination. Okay? Yeah, your hand up, yes? Yeah, actually we can. It takes a little bit more to throw it, okay? Throw it away from where you are. At first, while you're getting used to building it, it's best if you can put your body on the spot. Because first you just have to get used to this. This is like a new old technology. Once upon a time you knew this by heart, right? We all did. But it's like we have to remember again. And the body has to remember what to do with it. So it's worth taking the time, run your Maharic seal, and then begin with the tones. And what really makes it powerful is if you're not going to get much back tones or back song back if you don't let your soul tones come through. All right, this is where the gift is. If you give the gift and allow and expose yourself to the planet, it will give the gift back. The other ones, you'll set a safe zone. You will anchor the D12 frequency there. And now these are interesting. These are Q zones. I like to use the word Q zones because they can be used for more things than just being safe. Okay? They do happen to create safety. They are spaces. Keep track of where you put them, just in case things get weird on the planet, for a couple of reasons. If it gets only semi-weird, where it's nice to know there's some place that you can go to be safe, and if you happen to have riots in your city or something for some stupid reason. I mean, cities do that once in a while, especially out in California. I know. There hasn't been too much of that here. But if you want to go someplace safe, keep a list so you remember where they are. I mean, I know that some people are like, I'm going to go drop them everywhere. I'm going to go to the supermarket and I'm going to put one down. It's like, this is good. Go for it if you feel like doing it. You know what I mean? But keep track of the ones, the main ones, because you may have so many that if it ends up in a time where you actually need them and you're under stress and you need to go to one, you forget where it is. You forget where all of them are. Well, it depends on how much frequency you set. But if you notice, I was amazed when they told me how long, after we did this little exercise, how long? 4 weeks? I was there maybe 4 hours. That was hardly, it wasn't as if we'd built a huge amount of frequency and got perfect harmonies going or anything. That little bit of sound stimulation did that much. So when we set these in the grids, they're going to hold for a while. I'm going to get a commentary. First I'm going to guess. I would say they have about a 2-year lifespan. That's just the feel I'm getting. And I'm going to see if I'm right or wrong. I'm getting a close. More like 3.5. Okay. I've been corrected. It's a long time. I'm saying about 3.5 years. You set one, what we just did, which was set one down. Now it's probably not going to stick in the floor and in the carpet very long. It'll pass through those. But when it hits the planetary grids down under here, we just set a safe spot. And actually we set quite a big one because it wasn't just me doing this. They go out about 5 yards. One person's. But if you get a big group, imagine the size of them you could make. Right? They're like exponential. They go out and out and out. this is some of the things we're probably going to be doing or are being asked to do when we go to Kauai and things like that. We're going to do some of this tomorrow when we go into running a round table. Because this wasn't a round table. This was activating our tribal shield and making a Q zone. Now we're going to take it tomorrow to the next step. It'll probably be toward the end of the day, because I really want to share with you a story about history. That history can be very boring, but when you hear this one, the present will make a whole lot more sense, and then you'll know what we're dealing with, and I think it will help. But then we will get into the running the rainbow round, and we will use this again. We're going to try it again. But we'll probably go right to setting the Q zones. So we'll start there. Okay? Yeah.
I'm playing with 12 and 1. I have a 4.5-year-old granddaughter. We were singing together all the time. But we have fun with it.
Right.
Do I have to run on our shield for her?
It's a good idea. What you basically do with children, now you kind of basically, before I do anything on anybody, I send up kind of a query I pictured this disc of pale silver light hanging up over their head, symbolizing their Christos level self. And I send a line of pale silver energy from my head out with a thought on it. Is it okay that I do this? And I will usually get a feel. If it's not, if it's something I'm not supposed to do, I've never got, ever, a response back that, no, don't do my heart seal for anybody. I mean, it's always been, yes, please do. You know what I mean? And all you have to do with children is you activate your own, and then inhale and push the breath and pretend your breath is expanding into your shield, right? Then inhale it back in to a point under your feet, and then very gently exhale it out to 12 inches below the feet. A little spark of light from yours to 12 inches below their feet, where their Maharic seal will be. See it hit there and then pop up a little to 6 inches. So you're hitting where their Maharic seal is in the center and bringing it up to the 12th chakra to stimulate it. Okay? That's usually all it takes, and it'll pop. Yeah. Because it's a natural phenomenon. It's not something you're making happen in them. You're just giving it a little frequency to stimulate the natural response. Yeah. I recommend it for anybody's kids and babies and everything. It won't hurt anybody. It's part of your natural anatomy. Yep.
I just wonder if anyone in the group and yourself was aware of the fact that we were all singing in the same key, a major key. No one was singing. I think I heard one note that was a minor note, but that doesn't matter. But the point is, what was the key? Does anybody know? I think it was either C or B. I don't know.
I tend to go into the natural state.
I'm going to just find that key when I get home. Is that natural for a group to find?
I don't know. I thought we sang it awfully together.
Everyone was singing in the same key.
Starting to do something, and I also started to feel the Elohai presence come through.
What?
The Elohai presence, the level of each of us. The level of each of us that is connected to density 5, to the Renal in density 5. That's part of our. A part of our consciousness is an Elohai, an Elohim. Okay, not an Anu Elohim, but an Elohai Elohim. That's the part of our consciousness we had to leave up in density 5 to get to density 4 and then density 3 and come on down. So because they were the founders race that the primary coding of our genetic template came from, we still have a part of our consciousness there. And when we begin to open here, we can let that part of ourselves sound. It brings through the soul tones and the oversoul tones and the avatar Christos tones if you let it. And sometimes you can take a group of people who've never met each other before, and half of them don't even like to sing, but if they can get into that space where it's an opening that happens inside where you just feel this part of you with you, and it just moves through you and can sing. And I've heard people go for 45 minutes, just these beautiful high, like ethereal tones and harmonies. And you go, whoa, look at this, we couldn't have done it if we tried. I was starting to feel that happening here. Where some people were getting into that space where it was starting to harmonize the waveforms in all of the groups. So I think that's what you were picking up on. You were right. There was something strange about that we were all much more organized sounding together than I would have thought. Just coming into exercises like this. But try to find the Elohai voice in you. It's your voice. It's not something you're channeling from somebody else that's a space alien. I don't recommend that at all, these days, because most of them are trying to do something to you. But your own self, your Christos self, and your Elohai self that is part of the Christos template and part of your Rishi template. It has a beautiful voice, and it will heal you if you let it sing. Sometimes there are people that open to that part of themselves so completely that they will sing, and they can literally heal illnesses just by singing in the presence of someone ill, because they allow the full spectrum of frequency. If we remember, sound is a frequency of vibration. Everything is made of frequency. Certain sounds can destroy, others can heal in an instant. You start to tap your healing power if you let that part of yourself from density 4 and density 5, and I don't mean D4 and D5, I mean density 4 and density 5. There's a difference. Density 5 is dimension 15, 14, 13, okay, and density 4 is 12, 11, and 10. Okay, so I have to clarify sometimes because it's easy to confuse. Oh, D4, density 4. No. No, don't. Density 4 is much higher than D4. Okay, yep.
I can't sing at all, and I just found myself singing.
You'll amaze yourself. First of all, we get used to telling ourselves we can't, so we don't. You know, everybody can sing. Nobody said you had to sing good, you know, but everybody that has a voice and can sing. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I've seen that move through people, and it brings tears. There's this release that happens where it just comes up, and it's like a cosmic cry, you know, like a good cry, you know, letting it out, just finally, like a release of something that's wanted to express for so long. Okay, take a sip of soda. Does anybody have any questions? These codings are for the Angelic Human template. Okay, the Angelic Human template was the Angelic Humans were appointed as guardians over these grids, so their DNA was created with the patterns of these grids. So really, like an Anunnaki could use this, and it's not going to open the grids for them because they don't have the template. All right, they have to, for them to access the grids, they have to either get control of one of our bodies that has the codes, which they like to try to do through body snatching, or they have to manipulate things with mechanical technologies to run frequency combinations, and that doesn't work as well. Okay, they can cross pole shift that way, though. Okay, well, yeah.
DNA strands, and I know you have been teaching that DNA strands are very difficult to open up. It takes a great deal of time and effort, but it seems to be everybody and his brother
I know,
is talking
about
about you know, all we have to do is a kinesiology, and we can get you open. I would love to have a discussion with the people who are saying, oh, well, here, wham, zam, there you go, you're 12-strand activated, right? There's so much of this happening in the New Age movement, it makes me want to laugh. Because if they were 12-strand activated, they'd be able to walk on water, disappear at will. Right? There's just a few of the things they'd be able to do. They'd be able to levitate before your eyes, all right? They're walking around saying, I'm 12-strand activated, I'm in Christ consciousness now, with this ego about this big, I'm so superior, I made it, you didn't get it. You know, I mean, they're being tricked. Most of the stuff is coming through its original source. We're Anunnaki channels that we're telling them, oh, do this, and then there you go, you've got your 12-strand. Oh, now we'll do your 13. They're not teaching them the mechanics. These people couldn't tell you what was in a DNA strand template if their life depended on it. They don't know about base codes, acceleration codes, fire codes. Some of them, actually, I found some of them picking up stuff out of my books and making it their own, because, base codes and acceleration codes sounds good, right? You have to be, it's like the difference between an authentic and a fraud. You know, if you're going to buy a Mona Lisa, you want to get the real one if you're going to pay a lot of money for it. When it comes to DNA, you want the real thing, or you're going to let somebody run a real deception on yourself. And the big one that's going to run it is yourself. If you buy into, this is the easy way, that's too hard. She says it's hard. I don't want to listen to that. So we'll go do it this way. It's the easy way. There you go. I'm 12-strand activated. I don't have to do anything more, do I? I've reached it. I don't have to look anymore.
I just have to follow. Who was it? Was it Angel Michael or who was it out there? You know, that told me how easy it was. Thank you. It was so easy. I have met people like this. One of them had the nerve to say to me, "I move hurricanes all by myself." I said, "Really?" He said, "All by yourself? No help from like God or anything?" "No, all by myself. Sometimes I'm so powerful I can't stand myself. Neither can anybody else." This is where these false teachings are really, really dangerous, because they're playing on people's ego and trying to say, "Oh, it doesn't have to be hard. You don't have to work. It's handed to you. It's easy. There you go." Look out for that stuff. Believe me, if there was an easier way, if I could say, "Here, you're activated," I would have loved to. Because I would love to be doing other things except making chart packs that, all night long and things like this. If there was an easier way, I would be glad to give it to you. But unfortunately, it isn't something that just, bam, you decide it's going to be there and it's just going to happen overnight. You're dealing with physics, the physics of consciousness. So this is what that's about. It's about giving people a little bit of knowledge so they think they have it all. They run off with their egos, patting themselves on the back, thinking they've got it, when they don't have it. They don't have it, and they don't look for it anymore because they think they have it. It's a trick. I feel bad for people that are caught in that.
A lot of Star references on the internet says that you have to go through lots of pain in order to move ahead.
Especially if you use the Anunnaki program.
Well, she said she had to go, it's her personal experience of having to go through other pain for her own.
With that
and
one.
then she says everyone has to do that. And why is she so interested in moving people ahead when she's representing the Anunnaki?
Jalaila's a body snatch job.
Yeah, but why is she...
She's not a walk-in. She's a, "Excuse me, I'm coming in."
Yeah, but her program is ascension.
This poor girl. I remember the one was in before that.
Her program is ascension. That's the program.
It isn't ascension. It's being passed off as ascension. What the Anunnaki are trying to do, this is some of the stuff we're revealing in the book, the new stuff that's coming out, because at this point, it's no holds barred. We're letting the stuff out. We're showing what they've been doing. What they're trying to do is get people into an 11-strand activation, 11-strand reverse matrix activation. What 11-strand reverse matrix means is none of the strands can break. The 12th subharmonic and all of them is missing. They're trying to turn us into galactic humans,
But
which
can't
means...
they move you up? Can't she move up to the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th the same way we're moving?
Not exactly.
Well, not
They
exactly.
they can have immortal bodies, but they cannot ascend because it requires full strand braiding. If you have reverse
Wait,
matrices...
ascend to where? She's only interested in going up to the 5th. That's where we're not going to the 9th now. Maybe some people are.
Last time I read Jalaila's stuff, with her first book, it says she's the matriarch, wife of Devon from the 9th dimensional royal house of Eieyani.
Right.
Last time I checked. This is you got to be careful with these people.
But she's interested in moving us up past the same point where we have to go in order to stop the bullshit. She expresses that very clearly. That same program.
Explore it. If you find good stuff in it, take it.
I say this is what she's presenting.
Right.
So why is she so interested in moving us up to the same place, to save the earth? She's interested in saving the earth.
She's claiming to be, right?
Pardon?
She's claiming to be, right?
Yeah.
Now the lady herself, the lady herself, what's left of the lady herself, I don't have anything against her, but I know who she's working with. All right? The Pleiadians and Aberwirans were used to be called the Luciferians, okay? Because there was the Lulatan family of the Tob Enki group, and there was the Satan family of the Marduk Anunnaki group, okay? They mixed and they created a blend that became the Luciferians. They entered bioregenesis programs here, entered the Emerald Covenant, and then after they got their strands up to the Melchizedek level, where they had access to a 6-strand template, they then told all the guardians to stick it, and they went in and they raided this race, and they corrupted the gene pool here to the point where our guys had to come back in and continually reseed the 12-strand pattern. These are part of the team of the Atlantian conspiracy that we're going to talk about tomorrow, and it's kind of like, I end up in the position where I'm so sick of looking at the lies that are being told to sucker people. I used to be very, very nice about it, where I'm not going to name names, I'm not going to say that I'm, against or for anybody's work. At this point, I had been nothing but bashed while I kept my mouth shut for almost 2 years.
All right, people making stuff up about me. I mean, there's nasty stuff. Well, I'm trying to be nice and say, okay, yeah, I know you're running a bad agenda, but I'm not going to tell because I'm just not, it's not worth picking a fight. At this point, because they have, literally, they're part of the groups that have entered the United Resistance, and they are trying to cause harm here. All right, and they have done it. When you see some of the history, I'm going to bring some of the history tomorrow, show you about 30 different dates of things that have been done by those guys, because they're one of the prime players. Then maybe you'll understand why. I got to the point where I said, oh no, not them. I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to hide them anymore, because that is what's causing people to get hurt. At this point, well-meaning people think, oh, it seems like a nice book. Like I looked at her book, and the whole bit, the book seems harmless. Yeah. I traced the energy signature behind it. It isn't harmless. It's a nice little candy cane to lead you into the next level. It's like leading a dog with a sweet, Yeah. That's what they're trying to do here. And it's unfortunate. There's more information. Tomorrow we'll get into that, because this is some of the stuff I was planning to reveal. There is something called the Luciferian Covenant that was signed in 9,560 BC, right before the flood. They staged the flood. They did it on purpose, and it progressively infiltrated and took over since then. Okay, there's a few little things. I'll tell you how we lost our memory in this process too. That happened in 3,470 BC. Okay, so there's some things attached to her. Not just her. It's not that I'm anything against Delilah. It's who she's working with that's the problem. And they're a huge group. They're working with a bunch of different channels under different names. But they're the same group of people. And they don't mean well. They really need some, like manners put on them. But meanwhile, you just need to protect yourself. I have nothing against them. I actually had Anunnaki cycles where I had to live with these people and trying to help them with biogenesis. Because it is a loving space. It's sad to watch a race that has been helped and helped and helped get to this height and then fall flat on their face and go back into dominion again.
And take out his ruler.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to do. So there's a lot to talk about where Palladian Nigerians are concerned and who they really are. This is some of the stuff that's coming out in the book, because they broke them right down. They showed you where it came from 250 billion years ago when the first conflict started in this time matrix, right down through to show you who was who was who. And there's several different versions of Anunnaki. So that's what we're dealing with, with those guys. Yeah.
Is it true also about Messianics?
Here we go.
The reason I ask you
I will say a very general. All right, the question was something about Barbara Messianics.
the reason I ask you that is
I'm not going to get in too far into the, oh, that one, or that one, or that one. I'm not here to call names. I will simply give a few references. 99% of the Palladians, whoever called themselves Palladians, are the Palladian Nigerian Luciferians, or they're the Bellicudium, which are the ones that they corrupted on Terra that used to be Turaneusiam humans, that they turned into half-reptilians because they got involved with the Anunnaki and the Drax. So Palladians we need to be real careful with. There are 4 groups that have to do with Alcyone that aren't out to get us. They're all of them are Ceres groups, which are one of the guardian races out of the Seraphi family lines. And they're primarily either human-looking or avian human. They look like, that's where you get the angel kind of things. So there are about 4 decent groups of Palladians. But most of them are coming through. This is part of the plan. This whole channeling movement and the whole New Age movement was part of the plan. Okay? So just take it all with a grain of salt and keep your heart seal up and trust yourself to be able to feel the difference. You can see the goodness. There can be goodness on the outside. And that's what tricks a lot of people. Fine, take the goodness part. That's not going to hurt you. Just be careful what it's trying to move it into frequency-wise. That's my only advice with that kind of stuff.
It's always been fascinating to me because the various prophetic books that have been written about Bible, the prophecies, and the 12 tribes. Are you going to cover the relationship between your 1 through 12 and any specific tribes? Basically, what I have read, and I conferred with someone who was quite an expert on it once, each tribe basically is related to a country, almost exactly. In other words, Benjamin was Britain, and I'm not sure what America was.
It's interesting, though, because the names of the tribes,
Yeah.
they're the changed names. The ones we came to know as the 12 tribes down here, they were the Anunnaki names, the Hyksos kings' names. They're called the Hyksos kings. Hyksos. They're the ones that the desert kings that invaded Egypt and they got kicked out after a while. There's a whole lineage that came out from Atlantis here. There's some of the stuff I will talk about. I was not going to go that far in tomorrow's workshop, but I think with this group I will. You have a right to know if I... Okay. Okay. But I will touch on some things because you guys are right there. You're with me so far. I'm going to share some things with you tomorrow that I was going to wait until they're fully published in detail in the book, because I don't like to give stuff out of context that might be controversial that people will, go about before they see the context that it's in. But I'm going to share some things with you about the 12 tribes and the stories we've learned about the 12 tribes, and the stories we've learned about Moses, and the stories we've learned about Abraham. I'm going to find out who these people are. Enoch too. Enoch's been a buddy of mine, at least since 1983. That's when he entered the Emerald Covenant. Anyway, so we'll talk more about that stuff tomorrow. Tomorrow ought to be a real war. We might not video on that day, so just get that on video.
It's recommended that you work with a single terminated quartz crystal, approximately 3 to 4 inches in diameter and 4 to 6 inches in height. Alternatively, a quartz crystal of these proportions can be visualized. Clear quartz is a very important element of human evolution because it's composed of consciousness which is the same as that which composes the human DNA template. This means that the specific scalar waveforms that form the human DNA template are the same form as those found in the quartz crystal, thus a natural co-resonance between the consciousness of quartz crystal and the core of human consciousness that forms the DNA template. By acknowledging this connection, the structure of quartz crystal provides keys that unlock patterns of encoded information that goes back to the times when the human DNA template was first created. These programs are called the crystal keys. They are called keys because they correspond directly to the electrotonal commands needed to release the higher codes between the DNA strands, which in turn allows for accelerated strand braiding. Strand braiding is the key to expediting consciousness expansion and ascension. Through strand braiding, new chemical entities become active in the body, glandular and neurological structure, that change carbon elements in the body structure which otherwise serve to block progress. The process associated with this exercise will open up what's called celestial stems and branches. These are energy interface conduits between the physical nervous system and the neurotransmitters, the nadial lines that connect the physical to the etheric and outer field circulatory system, all of which connects the higher levels of consciousness and the highest levels of DNA to the lowest portions of the physical body. This technique represents a mathematical journey which bypasses certain organic sequencing programs that allows for conscious override of the genetic times codes that regulate how fast a physical body can integrate higher consciousness. This process enables the body to step out of time, which means that the process suspends the normal rate of code activation as controlled by the planetary grids. With practice, your conscious self can enter hypertime. When working with this technique, the point of greatest benefit lies in being in the crystal temple. To achieve this, to suspend the limitations of density and the effects of the time cycle of the planet, it's important to take the time to feel the sensations, and particularly those associated with color. That's when you really pull the frequency into your body fields. This technique should not be used more frequently than every 6 days to begin with. In time, it may be used every 3 to 4 days. Working with this technique more frequently will only serve to defeat its object because the body system will not be able to cope and will simply shut down. Okay, let's start the technique. It's called the crystal keys. Okay, holding the crystal, and this now becomes your personal template. You are about to make a journey into the crystal. Feel the crystal and just spend a moment making a deep and strong connection with this crystal. Now just imagine the crystal is in your pineal gland, inside your head at its center. You can try to feel the weight of it in your brain as you hold it up on your forehead, as if you're holding it at your third eye. Visualize it in the center of your head, and visualize your pineal gland inside the crystal. In your mind's eye, see a small version of yourself, just as you are now, walking along a deep sapphire blue path. And this will lead you to your crystal temple, somewhere up ahead. Take your time on this path and try to sense yourself pulling the frequencies of the deep sapphire blue path up into yourself. All else around you becomes dark. The pineal gland inside the crystal temple is like a tiny, multifaceted crystal ball, and this becomes the objective. Continuing to draw frequency from the D10 light as you enter the temple. Entering the temple now and finding the tiny, multifaceted crystal ball inside. This crystal ball actually radiates energy which will almost feel like a fuzzy outer shell. And your little self begins to explore this fuzzy barrier, transferring the feeling of the energy sensation from your little self to your own physical feeling. We can now mimic what our little self has found and re-experience this by bringing our own hands up to our shoulders and feeling the energy barrier. As you do this technique more and more, the barrier will begin to be progressively further away from your physical body, and you can actually chart your progress with your technique by measuring the distance. Return our attention now to our little self and resume the focus so that sensing the force field, imagining our little self cupping its hands as if it's attempting to hold the water, and as it does so, give the command which will be heard on many levels. I now command my book of knowledge. I now command my book of knowledge. When delivered with certainty and knowing, a glowing crimson ball will just pop into the center of the small self's hands. You can see this ball begin to spin, and it spins faster and faster, and suddenly turning into liquid silver light in the palms of your hands. as the small self raises its cupped hands to pour the liquid light into its own crown chakra, you can mimic this action. When the little self has transferred all of the liquid into the crown chakra, remove your physical hands from your head. Just allow this process to take as long as is necessary. And when you do remove your hands from your head, notice that the little self feels a flutter of energy as waves of silver light pass through its entire body. Meanwhile, the crimson ball is nestled in the heart center, and try to connect with that. And once you have made the connection with the crimson ball at the heart center, bring your attention back to your physical body. Feel the sensation of the sparks of liquid silver light fluttering through your own cells as you hold your connection with the crimson ball while you feel the liquid light. The crimson ball has the capacity to release locks on knowledge in an earthly capacity. Inhale, and on the exhale breath, breathe silver energy into the ball, making it expand. Breathing and exhaling into the silver ball, making it expand now. And just continue breathing, exhaling energy into the ball until it becomes the size of a grapefruit. Returning your attention to the little self. And notice now that it now opens and extends its right palm to receive a frequency key. It looks like a symbolic golden key. Mimic this action yourself by opening your right palm and holding it forward. You can almost feel a fuzzy presence 1 or 2 inches above your palm where the symbol key is manifesting in your astral form. Notice now that the little self has drawn its palms back together, transferring a mirror image of the symbol key into the left palm. Sometimes from time to time the color of the key may change, although the key will remain the same. The small self now opens the hands and puts the palms onto the force field surrounding the crystal, which holds the pineal inside. The symbols are transferred into the force field. Bringing the back of your physical hands up to your shoulders. Feeling the force field of the crystal. Inhale, and on your exhale, transfer the symbols into the field. This will temporarily release resistance in the field and allow what is present to move through. The small body now removes its hands from the force field around the crystal and simply walks through it into the pineal temple at the center of the crystal. You can almost sense or feel a swoosh as the little self enters, and you follow, discovering that the force field is mutable. As you move inside the temple, you notice that it has grown huge. In the center, you may notice a tiny gold and silver, almost casket-like box within a small pool of light, surrounded by the deep blue sapphire light. This box holds the jewel that you are seeking, and the little self knows the route to this box, and you follow any path that the little self takes. Everything around you is absolutely delightful, and everywhere is surrounded by deep blue sapphire light. You move forward, drawn by the knowing of that incredible small self, both together as if pulled by a magnetic beam. The tiny silver gold box, surrounded by blue sapphire light, becomes closer and closer. Again, the deep sapphire blue is all around, lush, rich, and very much alive. As you reach the small silver gold box and pick it up, it feels warm to your touch, warm and soft. As you open the box, rays of multicolored light radiate out, and you see the rays radiating from a small, perfectly formed crystal. The rays are the knowledge of self flowing up to you from the core template. The small self picks up the crystal and puts it into its mouth. You can actually mimic this yourself now as you feel the sensation of the tiny crystal on your tongue. Your little self swallows the crystal with absolutely no resistance at all, and the crystal moves down to the solar plexus chakra, seat of the 3D mind. You can feel yourself swallowing the crystal too, and feel it move down to your own solar plexus. This crystal holds all knowledge of your true self within and across all cycles. You can feel the crystal in your stomach now. It's a living entity. It will stay with you until its information, its knowledge, and its consciousness is absorbed by your body. You have actually several keys available, and each one takes 6 months to absorb, working with a 3 to 6 day cycle. During each 6-month cycle in meditation, simply return to the crystal point in the stomach, and the crystal ball will teach you the things that you need to know. Through this exercise, This can enable you to open up to very specific conduits of data. You can leave your soul self in the temple to learn more, or you can bring it back into your mind, whichever feels more comfortable. You can also use this as a walking crystal exercise. This can teach your mind to be aware of the living presence of the crystal at all times. If you can sense its weight, feel it as much as you possibly can and as often as you can. In your waking awareness, the crystal provides much information pertinent to your state of focus at any given moment and will provide much support and much guidance.
Morning, everybody. Happy Easter. Okay. If I run around today with my finger in my right eye, it's because something went into it. It blew into it when we were driving in the car. So it's not a sign for anything. It's just my eye hurts. Okay. I think it's enough because we'll have this on once I work with the mylars. Okay. Did anybody have any interesting, noticeable effects from the Emerald Awakening? Like, feel any energy running or anything? Did you? Yeah, I heard a couple of people there's one person had some like major energy running. I guess she was very sensitive to the to changes in the body. But usually it's pretty mild. Okay. Today we've got a lot of ground to cover. And part of the ground is going to be, I'm going to talk to you about some history. After I get done doing some of that, which is going to include talking a bit about the man that was called Jesus Christ, and it was interesting because I didn't plan on having this workshop on Easter. It just so happened that the dates they had available for the Source of Life were over Easter weekend. So it just so turned out, and they chuckled upstairs a little bit, saying, we knew that. We had it planned that way. Because when we get into talking about history, and we get into talking about the man named Jesus Christ, and who was he really? We know the stories we've heard, and some of us accept them, and some of us are part of religions that don't accept them, and that's okay. But the man himself was a person. He was a real person, and he was here at a certain time, and he was part of a team that was sent in to do certain things here. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, because the Christ drama is the main part of history that came up to directly affect us and still noticeably affects us now as far as how our culture is structured and the ideas that we hold. We know very little about the true history of that because so much has been taken out of what was supposed to be the Bible that none of the true history records are there. We don't know why he really came, other than the stories were told us that he was supposed to be our Savior. Now, when we're teaching Law of One spirituality, the concept of a Savior is not usually applied. You can have people that come in to help you find the inner Christ presence within. But if someone comes in and says, I'm your Savior, follow me, that's different. That's saying, give your power to me because you don't have any. Jesus Christ did not teach that. He did not look at himself as a Savior. He was out of the Magi Grail Line kings. He was one of the Grail Line kings. And they go back to seeding 3 that we talked about yesterday, 798,000 BC, was when the Grail Line kings were last seeded here in the Paladoria races. So Jesus, the man, was out of that lineage. He came to bring the message of the inner Christos, of the Maharata, and he came to bring certain translations of information from the ancient times that every time it was brought here, it would last a few weeks on the planet before they'd start manipulating it and trying to get rid of it. Because this planet has had problems with 2 things. fallen angelic races invading and coming in and trying to get control over our cultures, and Illuminati human races that would assist them. We're going to talk a little bit today about what the heck is an Illuminati anyway. Are they the same as us? Are they humans just like us? Or is there something different? To understand Illuminati races, we're going to take a little journey back further than the Christ story to about 250,000 BC, which is the beginning of a period that involved what our scientists call the Neanderthal man. Because to understand what an Illuminati race is, you need to understand the origins of that race with the Neanderthal and how it moved up from there. So we're going to talk a bit about that too. When we get into this afternoon, after the lunch break, we got another chart pack ready in case people want it for today, because we have the Atlantean maps. Okay, these are the maps of where Atlantis really was, and it shows now where the remnants of it still are. We're going to talk a bit about why that information was hidden from us when it's really still right in front of our faces. Why was Atlantis hidden? Why was it made to become a legend rather than a fact of history? There was a reason. There was a big reason for it. And that reason has to do with a big gold box that came to be known as the Ark of the Covenant. So we're going to talk about the Ark of the Covenant, the real Ark of the Covenant, which is a portal passage between Andromeda in the 9th dimension and comes down into Giza. It used to come down into Atlantis. Now this information on the Ark of the Covenant is in the book Voyagers, Volume 2, Secrets of Amenti. That was in the original printing of that, and it still will be in the second printing. But we didn't talk much about the big gold box that came to be known as the Ark of the Covenant. So we're going to talk about that too. And this afternoon, where Michael has gone over to get the Mylars and everything now, because we just threw this extra chart pack together, there's something called the Atlantean conspiracy. That is a fact of our history that has been very buried, because it's a fact of our history that's still going on now. There's a progression of events that have taken place since the year 25,500 BC that this era that we're in now is still directly a part of. This was supposed to be the closing cycle, the grand finale of the Atlantean conspiracy. The Atlantean conspiracy involves several races, so we'll talk about it after we talk about the Illuminati races, because it has been run by those races on this planet. So it's helpful to understand who they were before we see what they did and what they're still doing. Once we get through that, and there's some amazing pieces of history here that will put a lot of if we look at our history now, there's lots of different conflicting things, there's little pieces of known things, and there's a lot of speculation in between, where scientists and archaeologists and theologians try to piece things together from the little pieces of known or verifiable or recorded history that we have. We'll see a progression here, where those pieces of information that we consider valid, where they fit. They fit in, but they fit into a bigger picture. If we understand what the bigger picture is and what it has been, we'll be able to understand what we're walking around in today. Because right now, we're confronted with a unique set of circumstances. They're unique, not in a huge picture sense. If we go back for many millions of years and look at the history of the angelic human race, it's just another round of what we're used to putting up with. But it's unique in the sense that we're in a position where we don't have our race memory with us right now. It's with us, it's in the DNA, but it's not turned on yet. So none of us remember most of the history. So when we see this progression of events, it's quite unique compared to what we've been taught to believe about the nature of our history. If we can understand it, it'll make perfect sense what's going on right now when we look at contemporary society, the mainstream, when we look at the New Age movement, when we look at the UFO movement, because they're all connected. And they're all connected through the Atlantean conspiracy. So we'll get into that a bit this afternoon. And the big thing is, yesterday we got into the solutions. I like to put the solutions first, because by the time you get to the problem, it's not intimidating anymore. You know what to do about it. And that's why we covered yesterday, revealing the tribe names, because in the tribe names you have the power to activate your tribal shield, which is to activate the core DNA template, flame codes that correspond to Earth's grid codes. So you can begin to not only accelerate your own development, but you can begin to make a difference in what's running through the planetary grids. When we get through the Atlantean conspiracy, we're going to go into, and maybe I'll even start a little bit of that before, we're going to go into the round tables. Okay? The round tables were legendary in the Arthur period. They came up with the Arthurian legends. But they were long before that. The round tables were the signet councils the people who were assigned to Stargate protection. The whole angelic human race was originally assigned to Stargate protection. When the Paladoria races came in, 798,000 BC, they would run round tables during stellar activation cycles for a purpose. The planet's grids had been damaged since the fall from Tara, which is described in the Amente book. That fall took place 550 million years ago. And since that time, the planetary grids of Earth have been damaged, and there has been a major repair mission going on. The round tables were part of the repair mission, and the angelic human races, when they were seated here to conduct the repair mission. The repair mission involved being able to run the signet codes, which are those flame codes in the tribal shield in the DNA. They would open the Maharata current, which is the D12 frequency that comes down through your system from your D12 Maharic shield template, part of your anatomy. Once that current was opened, they could pull in the higher currents called the rainbow ray, which are the three currents of the primal light fields, the Kirishe primal light fields. You have what they call the blue flame, the gold flame, and the violet flame. And then from beyond there, out of the time matrix, you have the currents from the primal sound fields, which are vibrational waves that run down through the light fields. So they would open within their systems. The ancient races would open the Maharata current, and they would begin to move the rainbow ray through into their bodies. That would give them enough frequency to directly access the planetary grids. Now, once they were able to access the planetary grids, they had a full understanding of what it meant to run a round table. A round table was a group of them that would get together, and they were very specific at those times. We don't need to this time because we're going to use Tribe 13, which is if you can't find exactly what codes you have in your DNA template, because that's kind of hard to do because we're all kind of mixed-matched at this point. We have all sorts of things there. You can use the Tribal 13 formula of using Tribe 12 and Tribe 1 that gives you all the frequencies you need to activate your tribal shield. But in the old days, they used to have very intricate systems, mathematical systems, of knowing how many of what tribe to put at what location to get very specific coding into the specific stargates. Now, they would run at different periods of time, different intervals of time, during the stellar activation cycle on certain sites. They would run the frequencies together. They would link their frequencies together, so they would be able to create a critical mass energy imprint that would have a lot more power than one individual could have alone. And they would do it through a Maharic seal, though. When they linked their energy fields, they would not do a group Merkaba without having the personal Merkaba forming a barrier, because if you do Merkaba, which is activating the electromagnetic fields around you, if you do group energy work and you're combining your energies, but you do not use a Maharic seal, you will take on all of the energies of the group. If there's any karmic imprint in there, or miasms or distortions in the DNA, you will get them by field resonance. So people out there in the New Age movement that are teaching group energy work, group Merkaba, and things like that are not teaching you the Maharic seal, they don't know about it because it's been so long since we could actually run a Maharic seal on the planet. This is new for us because it's only since January 1st, 2000 the D12 frequency could be pulled through the grids. But since that time, anybody that's talking to anybody up there that's really on our side would have told them about the Maharic seal already. If you're in a group that's running group energy work without it, you are going to take on the frequencies that you're combining with. And they would never do that in the ancient tribal days because they knew that you could damage each other, and they had DNA templates that were working well. But they knew they could overload each other's systems if they took on their imprint. So it wasn't that they were worried about getting miasmic distortion. They were worried about overloading each other's body grids. So the Maharic seal was just standard thing you always do. But they would get together, get their Maharic seals, get their tribal shield activated, begin to run the rainbow ray, and they would do it in very specific ways called signet stands. There are ways of taking the bodies in a group and realizing that bodies are energy conduits. So they would stand them in specific positions on the locations that they chose, and they would form a Q site that we talked about yesterday. And in the chart packs that are coming, I've outlined the steps of how you form a Q site, so it's in there in writing. So if you want to play with it at home, it's in there. They would form a Q site individually, and then they would expand it to make their individual Q sites expand into one. So they were building a very strong Q site zone, which means they're anchoring quite a bit of D12 Christos frequency into the grids on that location. Once they had the Q site, Then they would do a bit of dancing. They would stay in their locations, their positions within the tribal, or within the stand, the signet stand, but then they would activate their own Merkaba fields to a higher rate to bring in more energy. And as they activated their Merkabas, they would be stimulating the energy and creating this exponential effect. You can do this even singly, but they would combine, they would each do their Merkaba, and it would create the effect of amplifying the energies that were already set there. So they would create a massive group Merkaba zone out of the Q site. Now, in the instructions that are in the chart packs, it gets into very easily how you can do that when you're doing personal Q sites. You can activate your Merkaba. You won't be able to get it fully activated until your DNA is fully activated, but you can increase its spin rates to a comfortable level, and they'll stop if it goes beyond what your DNA can handle. It just won't go higher than that rate. But they're very, very simple. The Merkaba is a set of electromagnetic spirals, one inverted, takes the shape of a star tetrahedron. But the most important thing to know about it, if you just want to think about it in easy terms, is it's just two interwoven spirals of energy, like cones of energy, one coming down over the top of your head, and another coming up with its center in the earth core, the small point, coming up like this around you. One goes clockwise, one goes counterclockwise. So one is spinning this way, and the other is spinning this way around you. There are ways of accelerating how fast they spin. In the ancient days, when the DNA templates weren't messed up, there would be something called the daily salutations that were done by the Breatharian races. The Breatharians were the first cycle, the first round of the Palladia races. They would use Merkaba spinning to bring in enough frequency into their bodies where they didn't need to eat or drink. They could self-sustain. Now, we can't do that yet because we have to clear and activate the DNA template. But the process is very, very simple. Movement. Once you activate the Maharata current in your body, and then you move that body, you begin to generate a spin. If you go around in a circle, if you start moving around in a circle, you start to make the fields move around you. They would literally use what's called spin dancing, and not really fast where they fall over. Comfortable rate, but the faster you could spin and hold your center without getting dizzy, the faster you would get the Merkaba rate going. Now they would spin clockwise first with the electrical spiral coming down over the head. This would bring more energy in faster from up. Basically, the electrical spiral is taking energy, electrical energy, from the unified field, the interdimensional unified field, and running it down through your body into the earth. The magnetic spiral is doing the opposite. It's pulling energy back up from the earth and spiraling it up this way and out your body and back into the universal unified field. So they would first activate the electrical, and they would spin clockwise to do it. They would spin until they could begin to feel the movement of the energy moving around them, and then they would have a feel. They wouldn't even worry about the numbers. Some people teach Merkaba by ratios or numbers, like get this one spinning this fast and this one spinning that fast. They didn't worry about the numbers because they knew the body knew. The body knew how to regulate the relationships between the speeds. Usually numbers were used if you wanted to create an artificial configuration. If you wanted to control the spin over into a different rate than what would be its natural rates, and you wanted to make that ratio change between the natural ratio between electrical and magnetic spin, then you would start playing with numbers. Some systems taught that, and it was used in a way often to get people spinning things in the wrong directions, so they would be doing the opposite of what they thought they were. Some systems did that. A lot of that came out of the ancient Egyptian and Atlantian stuff, where they'd start regulating Merkaba spin and twisting teachings here and there to teach you to do it the wrong way for the effects they wanted, but not the effects you wanted. So you'd think you would be getting your magnetic going at a certain rate, but actually it wasn't your magnetic you were spinning that way. It was the electrical, because they tell you things like, one of them, they would say, like, turn to the left, assuming you'd start left here. Spin to the left. That would be, you'll have a clockwise spin. No, you don't. If you go to the left, you have a counterclockwise spin. Little twists in how the information was presented would get people who didn't know spinning their fields in the wrong direction. Now, the Merkaba controls the angular rotation of particle spin in your body. It controls the way frequency runs through your body. It's one of the ways that you can control how frequency runs through your body. So there were a lot of tricks out there of fallen angelics and Illuminati races playing with Merkaba and getting people to use it the wrong way. But the right way to use it was simply being aware that you had the two spirals, being aware that the body itself was coded to know the natural ratio relationships. No matter how fast you got one spinning, the other one would not spin at a different ratio. All right? It would increase with it, but it wouldn't go above that level of spin because the ratio was a fixed ratio and it was fixed in the DNA template. So they would basically spin, get the electrical Merkaba going till it felt, they could feel, you could sense in your body once you get the spins going, how much is enough. Like, okay, that's enough of a vibration. You get to feel a vibration in your body. As far as the speed, once they felt enough electrical, they'd very slowly stop. They wouldn't just stop the spin because then you'd fall down and you'd break the whole field temporarily, and it just goes back to what it was before you tried to accelerate it. But they would slow it down, slow the spin down till they came to a stop, and then they would stop and run some more of the Maharata current down through to stabilize that field. Then they'd slowly start going counterclockwise. They'd start to spin counterclockwise to get the bottom magnetic Merkaba spinning. And that would start to get that one going. It's like giving it kind of a kick, and then it will start to spin in the ratio that you set with the top one. They would use this process to tremendously accelerate the energies that they had run through the grid with the rainbow ray and the Maharata. And if they would do it together, they would literally create a large group Merkaba at the site that they were working. Now, these signet councils, and signet refers to Stargate, but instead of saying Stargate, they say signet because signet points go in pairs. There's a Stargate point, and then in a different location, there's a Stargate activation point. So the signet is used to refer, when you say signet sites, it can be one or the other. It's both of them. You know, the activation site, which is called a Q site, or the just basic signet site, which is where the Stargate opens. They were fully aware when they ran the round tables. They were the tables of the rounds. They knew they were part of a round, that those 4 evolutionary rounds that we talked about. They knew that in their place they were doing, in their time frame, they were doing their round, and they were counting on the fact that in the other race rounds, there would be the security councils doing the signet round tables in their rounds. So it was like a trans-time cooperative venture when they would run them. When we begin to run them now in our time frame, it's the same thing. In our line of history, what has happened is we ended up getting in trouble every time a stellar activation cycle happened. The grids crashed every time because something invaded and made it so we couldn't make the trans-time link the right way. It put us in a time continuum, or a larger cycle of forward movement that had sets of negative events that went with every stellar activation cycle. We're still in that continuum. What guardian races are trying to help us do now is make a shift into a different time continuum where those things went right. There are other time cycles of versions of this history in this earth that went in the positive vein, and they stayed in what's called the heroic probability, which is the one where they stayed in line with the whole system, the earth system, stayed in line with its Christos purpose. It stayed in line. The grids didn't get damaged. We can tap into that. We can make a splice from this time continuum into that time continuum. The mechanics are really sophisticated. We don't have to understand all of that. We can understand our part in it, how we can help. It's called the Bridge Zone Project. Bridge Zone, because they're making a bridge of frequency between this time continuum and the one where things went right. If we can make the bridge zone frequency strong enough, we can make a time continuum shift, which will literally move us out of the vector, the time vector, the forward movement that we're going into a more positive outcome. The Guardian has described it to me as the difference between the destiny of joy and the destiny of sorrow. Because if we stay in our current time vector, what would have happened if there was no intervention is we would have gone through pole shift at this period. The fallen angelics would have come in and take over. And in the year 2976 AD, because of what the fallen angelics would have done, it would have blown up the planet. So the whole thing would have been over. Not just the human race here, but the whole planet would have been destroyed. Because of that, and because of the fact that if this planet was destroyed, it would take out a bunch of other things that it's connected to. It would take out part of the Pleiades system, part of the Sirius system, and because there would be so many life fields affected, that even if humans made poor choices this time around, because basically Guardians will intervene if we ask them to, And if we're showing some respect for the fact that we exist in the universe, and this race as a whole is not doing a really great job of that, but there were enough people that came together during the harmonic convergence in the 80s that showed that there was enough people here that cared, that wanted to make a difference. Then it was discovered in 1983, the outcome that if intervention wasn't given, the fact that in 2976 the place would just blow up. That's when the Bridge Zone Project came to be. In 1983, it was decided by the founders in Density 5 and a bunch of the Guardian Councils all the way down that there would be direct intervention offered. They would have liked to have come in spaceships and introduced themselves, but there was a problem. Since 25,500 BC, the Nibiruans have had control of the solar spiral, which is gate 4, the one between the higher frequency levels, the higher density levels, and our 3D Earth system. You have to come through gate 4. And the basic proposition was, you try to go in fleet Guardians, and we'll make the place roll now. So it was a standoff. We can still access, the Guardians can still access parts of the grids. They still control some of the vortices. But because the Nibiruans have control of gate 4, which comes down through Giza, they do have the power at the moment to throw the magnetic grids out of balance where it would cause pole shift. So they basically, this is why the Guardians haven't come in at this point. In 1983 they would have made their presence known and try to explain things, to our political leaders. Good luck. They did make a few attempts to send emissaries in to talk to some of the people that are involved with the interior world government and try to explain to them what was happening and try to explain to them that the Zeta treaties that they entered in the 1930s were going to get them in really big trouble now. And they were basically told to take a hike. The Illuminati races were more interested in working with the fallen angelics that they're connected to than they were interested in peaceful means. It basically came down to, we'll agree with you Guardians if you give us bigger weapons. And I said, wait a minute, that's not how you fix things. You're not going to fix it by trying to blow the fallen angelics out of the sky. You're not going to fix it. It doesn't work that way. What will fix it are the round tables. It's if we do the round tables and we can build a critical mass of frequency in the Earth's grids, running the D12 Maharata current, resetting the fire letter sequences in the Earth's grids the way they're supposed to be, we can break the link that Nibiru has through the solar gate on the planet. We can stabilize the planetary Merkaba fields with gate 6, okay, and that's the 6-dimensional gate in Sirius B. We can hopefully prevent pole shift for Earth changes. That's what we're aiming for. In the ancient of days when they did this, they didn't have to worry too much about that. But they did have to worry about pole shift. Because even then, even if nothing attacked or invaded when the angelics were trying to do their job running the round tables, if they didn't run the round tables, because of the damages in Earth's grids, the place would roll. It would go, the electromagnetic fields would collapse and the place would go into a pole shift. If the angelics weren't on the planet, it would go into pole shift. So the angelic races, the angelic human races, were put here to serve as a buffer blanket until they could fulfill the Christos realignment and get the grids corrected. What they had to do was during stellar activation cycles, when the 4th through higher stargates open, 4th through 12 open, they had to run the round tables, the signet councils, and the codes that were in their DNA templates, those flame codes in the tribal shield that go exactly with what the shields of the planet are supposed to be coded in. They had the corrected fire letter sequences in their DNA. They would run the frequencies of the Maharata and the Rainbow Ray that would take the imprint from their DNA template, from their tribal shield, into the planetary shields. As long as there was enough of them to do it to reach critical mass, it would flip over portions of the distorted grids, setting the fire letter sequences back. So they could sustain the frequencies. They would transduce the frequencies in a stellar activation cycle. As each gate opened, more frequencies from the interdimensional spectrum would come in. They'd run through the angelic human bodies, pick up the right coding, hit a critical mass, and flip it in the planetary grids. That was what we were here for. So even if we weren't messed with, we still had a job to do, that the place would still roll if we didn't do our job. This is why, for thousands of years, we've been being fed prophecies that when the end times come, the end times are coming in the year 2000, right around there. This is why. It was known. And what the plan was to make sure the angelic humans were totally dysfunctional by then, where they couldn't run the round tables, where they never even heard the word round table by then. It was the Atlantian conspiracy that I mentioned before was an intentional, strategic, long-term plan to make sure that by the time the 2000 to 2017 stellar activation cycle came, angelic humans would be totally dysfunctional and have no more of the knowledge left where they could do what needed to be done to stop the place from rolling, because they want the place to go in a pole shift to clear the real estate. It will get rid of the humans on the planet and everything else for a while. What they planned to do then was take the connection that they have already made with the Nibiruan grids, get Earth's planetary fire letter sequences running in reverse like Nibiru is, which would literally change its orbital pattern in space. It would run it in reverse. And then they can live on the planet. Because right now it's very difficult for them to sustain for any long periods. It biologically wears them down because they can't handle the amount of frequency that runs through the planetary grids when the fire letters are running in the appropriate manner. So what the fallen angelics need to do, if they want to come in personally and stay here, not just visit, they can visit, but they can't visit and stay permanently because it wears out their biologies, because reverse fire letter sequence DNA coding cannot process nearly as much frequency as DNA coding that has the proper fire letter sequences. So there has been a long-term plan to get Earth's grids running in reverse, get rid of the human populations, so the fallen angelics could come in directly. And what they wanted to do when they got here was use the place to go through into the inner Earth portals, where there's something very precious there. We have the halls of Amente stargates, for starters. But in the inner Earth, there are something called the crystal pylon temples. There are 12 temples of massive proportions. They were created. They're, let's say, angel-made instead of man-made, but angel-made technology that utilizes natural crystalline technology and the natural frequencies of stargates to create massive amounts of power. There are certain planets within the 4 densities that have had one of these setups put in. They're usually put in when there is damage to grids and they need to repair them. So they weren't put in just so people could have more power to play with. I believe they were put in, the stuff is in the book, it's some of the new stuff that's being given. I think it was at the end of Seeding 2, I think it was about 3 million years ago, when they established the crystal pylon temples in inner Earth. These temples have selenite crystal rods, which I don't know if anybody's seen selenite, which is kind of like, it's clearish like quartz, but it's more milky, and it's like in striated, like, what would you call them? Kind of like fiber optic cables, but solid. And they come in long, kind of like bars. It's not like little quartz terminated crystals. They're like long bars. These selenite crystals were brought in from Sirius B, where they organically occur. They have the ability to go through 3 harmonics. That means you could take them up into density 3, and they would hold their form. You can bring them down into density 1, and they hold their form. Some things will transmute and change into something else. They'll change its chemical compounds and its molecular structure if you take it through the densities. But the selenite rods from Sirius B have a large range of being able to go from density 1 to density 3 and still operate and function as what they are manifest as in density 2 where they come from. These crystals are as big as skyscrapers, like the Empire State Building. Imagine a crystal that big. I mean, these are like walk-in crystals, you know what I mean? And some of them literally, the ones that aren't being directly used as the generator systems, have been carved out, and there are cities within them. So these exist in inner Earth, and there are 12 primary ones placed right in where the stargates open. In inner Earth, they have kept their stargates open. They have had them open for thousands and thousands of years. They haven't had the problems that we have here. Ideally, if things were going good on this planet, we would not even have to get a setup of our own crystals because we're connected to inner Earth. We would simply be able to run our stargate system off them. We could keep our gates open all the time once the planet's under Maharic seal, and it's safe to do that. If we do that now, we've got to be crazy because everything would invade from all over the place. That's why this place is very valuable, because it's one of the few places in our time matrix that there is a crystal pylon set up. If a person or a group that's a fallen angelic group gets a hold of a planet and gets control of one of these setups, they can use it to progressively go after all of the other planetary systems and galaxies. It has so much power and the ability to interface with all of the Stargate systems and the smaller portal systems in this time matrix that they could progressively use it to reverse the fire letter coding all the way up to D11 in this time matrix, which is what they want to do. If this time matrix was reversed, had its fire letter sequences run in reverse up to D11, it would create a little system within a system. The Density 5 Brennau, the Founders races, and the Janus Ascended Masters collectives from beyond the time matrix would not be able to come in directly anymore. They'd have to take on a reverse matrix, incarnation form, which would screw up their consciousness, so it's not worth trying to come in, because the biology would distort the consciousness anyway. This happened in this time matrix 250 billion years ago, when the fallen angelics destroyed Stargate 12. They destroyed it by reverse running the matrix of Stargate 11 in reverse and sending it back up into Gate 12, which made Gate 12 implode. They had control of this time matrix for several million years, and they were dominating everything they got their hands on. Worse than that, there were two groups of them. You had draconian ones that are out of the fallen seraphim, and you had the Anu ones, the Anu Elohim ones, that were out of the fallen Elohai. Elohai Elohim were the Founders race, and one group of them got all messed up. They became the Anu Elohim. It was kind of interesting the way it went down, where the fallen seraphim draconian races that were originally of Vega in Lyra, in Density 4, they started raiding certain areas and taking over planetary, like liquid light, we're talking liquid light dimensions here, planetary systems there, and started to work their way down the densities. This made the fallen Anu Elohim on a planet called Lyra Avion very nervous, and they petitioned the Elohai and the High Councils of the Brennau to destroy the draconian races because they were posing a threat. The draconians hadn't done anything so bad yet that it warranted destroying them, because the Founders know you can't destroy something. You have to heal it one way or the other. I mean, if you destroy it, you just turn it back to space dust, and it has to re-evolve back through a form again anyway, because we're all connected, we're all in God, we're all part of God. You can't make it go anyplace else. You can't send it off into a criminal camp in some other cosmos, because there isn't another cosmos. It's all taken place within God. So the answer to their request of will you destroy this race was no, but we will help to rehabilitate it. The Anu Elohim, being just as messed up as the Draconians were, didn't like the answer. They decided that they knew better, and they decided to get rid of council who would stop them from trying to destroy the Draconian races. So they figured out a way to back-run the frequencies from Gate 11, which was in Lyra Avion. These were the 3' gate planets. You had Vega in D10 that had Gate 10. You had Avion in D11, had Gate 11, and you had Aramatena, which was the one Earth is connected to, in D12, and that was a 12th dimensional gate. And they're all in Lyra. They were Lyra planets. Now, because the Anu Elohim didn't like the response of, no, we're not going to destroy the Draconian races, they decided they'd take matters into their own hands. They reversed the fire letters enough in Gate 11 to back run them up into Gate 12, and it imploded the morphogenetic structure, or the core template of Gate 12, which made it inoperable. That sealed everything into this time matrix. Until that gate could be fixed, nothing was going to ascend back out. They could get up to Gate 11, but they couldn't get any further. Then the Anu Elohim decided they were going to wage a campaign. Now it was their time matrix. Now they didn't have the interference of the Density 5 Brennau orders and the Janus Ascended Masters. Now they didn't have to deal with God, basically. They could be their own gods. And they set out a genocide campaign against the Draconian races. They were going to destroy them. If we wouldn't, they would. They were very much oriented to race supremacy, and they felt they were the most important race in the universe. And they were going to get rid of everything that wasn't them, including any other life forms that they didn't seed. And then they were going to seed it with only their own. That was their objective here. Now, if that were allowed to have happened, well, we wouldn't have the Draconian problem, that's for sure. They'd be gone by now. We wouldn't be here either. But it would have progressively, over many millions, maybe billions of years, they would have finally ended up destroying each other and the time matrix itself. And that causes other problems for other time matrices that are energetically connected to this one. So Gate 12 was repaired over numerous million years of guardians working in the higher fields to do it. That event was called the original sin. It was known as the original sin. That's where that concept came from, the biblical concept. It wasn't something that humans did to get kicked out of the Garden of Eden. It was something the Anu Elohim did to try to spitefully get even with Council because they didn't get their own way when they wanted to run race supremacy through this time matrix. The original sin was called a sin, not because sin, in the way it's usually used, is something even real. Sin can be understood as working or doing something in a way that erodes the life potential, the perpetual life potential. Now, the natural condition of the universe and of what God has created is to have perpetual life. We're supposed to be able to come into density, experience manifestation, have all sorts of neat experiences in the hologram, and then work our way back out. It's not supposed to be hard. And then when we get back out, we can hang out in non-manifestation for a while and at one-ment with Source. And then we can come back in and play some more. It was supposed to be a playground. Some playground. It's like war games, you know. So the original intention was to simply have a place to explore and develop and just explore creation in density. Now, the original sin was a sin because it worked in reverse. The actions worked in reverse of sustaining that original intention. If the original intention is to have perpetual energy and consciousness moving in and out, circulating like a living circulatory system, anything that blocks that ability would be considered a sin, or something that takes the word live, L-I-V-E, and puts it in reverse. You get evil, right? Okay. The original sin was the destruction of Gate 12 because what it did was it wiped out the 12th dimensional coding in anything's DNA template. Founders races that were lower than D12 that had manifested in deeper into the densities were stuck here because when Gate 12 is destroyed, the 12th strand imprint in anything's DNA will dismantle itself. It will turn into junk DNA, just like lots of our other strands have. This can happen on a planetary level, but it can also happen on a time matrix level, and that's what happened. Everything was trapped in here, including a lot of ascended masters that had come in to do different types of jobs. So there was a major effort made to restore Gate 12, and it was done, and this was still before humans were even created. The Azarites, which were a guardian race that was created at that time, they were created 250 billion years ago, I believe that was when they were created, to serve as the patrol team, basically, to make sure this didn't happen anymore to the Stargates, because it can literally decimate this system and others if it's allowed to happen. So we have a very long history that's led up to this point in time. And time is simultaneous, so it's really a history that's going on up there, right as we speak. And it's really, if time is simultaneous, it's not so much that something went that we can't change behind us. What we need to do is orient ourselves with the right set of energy networks that connect us to the past and the future, that are the ones we want to experience. When we connect with the future we want to experience energetically and start moving into that time continuum, it will shift the coding that's in the grids that goes with the past. It will erode the distortions and put them back to their original thing. So it's like literally erasing the past and putting them back right. We'll still have the memory of the fact that it didn't go right, but we'll also have the memory of the adjustment. So it doesn't negate the fact that the past happened. It upgrades it. That's what we're aiming for on a planetary level here. So there's a lot of pieces to cover. And a lot of this comes right back into what we call our known history. Our known history, since the time of the Atlantian flood, which occurred in 9558 BC, has basically been motivated by one thing, the quest for the Ark of the Covenant, and it wasn't the portal passage exactly that they were questing for. They were questing for a box, a big gold box that was the original one. The real one is gold and it's lined with lead. It was lined with lead and a few other substances to protect radiation from leaking out, because there were tools placed in there. After the Atlantian flood, 9558 BC, the humans that were put back on Earth couldn't access the inner Earth portals directly. They were on security seal. So the guardian races were given two tools that came to be known as the rod and the staff. They were small tools. The staff was about 3 inches long, and they were charged with frequency from the Ark of the Covenant portal passage, so they could transmit rainbow ray frequency, even if a human body at the time couldn't. If you had one of those, you could transmit portions of the Kira primal light fields. Primarily, they were coded to D5 coding. All right, so they weren't all powerful. But these tools were powerful enough to use destructively, that you could use them to get control of Earth's stargates. They were given not for that purpose. They were given to allow the guardian races that were here, the Magi Grail lines, to have open access to the inner Earth portals, where they could use the rod and the staff to open them when they wanted to, because they were invited, they were welcome into the inner Earth crystal pylon temples, and they used to work a lot with them. The rod and the staff were given so they would have the ability, and they were under high protection. They were always highly protected. But they were given so we'd have the ability to open the portals to inner Earth so we could keep the relationships going with the inner Earth civilizations. Well, once it got out that that box existed, we had a race for the box, and everybody was trying to steal it. And most of our history, including the known history as far as invasions, what country invaded what country, most of it was due to either trying to get the box itself, or at times, one of the things wouldn't be in the box, it would be someplace else. There was also a set of key codes that at a certain point there were security seals put on the box. So you had to have the light symbol sound programs that would open them, or you would basically get fried if you tried to lift the lid. Right? There were tablets that contained these, and there were several different, some were on papyrus a long time ago, but there were others that were in stone. They were the commands that would open the box. There were 10 given out of the 12, and the 2 would have to be given by the higher races. We get into the story of the 10 Commandments. There's a lot more to those commandments than they ever told us. The original 10 Commandments were the security release tones. They were the combinations of light, symbol, sound tones to be used in sequence to open the seals on the Ark of the Covenant box, so you could get in there to get the tools out. Now, there's a lot more. I won't go too much into the 10 Commandments story now, because it's part of a much longer history that I'll get more into this afternoon. But that gets into Moses and Abraham and a bunch of other famous characters that we know very well from the biblical teachings. The important thing about understanding this whole thing, I chuckle sometimes when I think about it, because it's like, of course, once you see it, that's how it affected me. When I saw how the history has unfolded and what the purposes were, it was like, oh God, of course, that's what it's been all about. But until that point, you have no idea. It doesn't look like anything's connected with anything. It's all been about a quest for who's going to get control of these gates in the 2017 stellar activation cycle. And it wasn't the first time that quest was. Before the Ark of the Covenant box was ever made, because that was relatively recent. That was made in 540 BC, after the flood of 9558 BC. Yeah. It was, that, so it wasn't the quest for the Ark itself that had been the main motivator of history before that. It was the Grail quest that was before that. And the quest for the Ark is part of the Grail quest. Because the Grail, the Holy Grail of the planet, is the Templar system. It's the system of stargates that allow the perpetual life force frequencies to run through. It's the cup. This is the symbolism that has come down. The Holy Grail wasn't the cup that Christ drank out of. Well, it was, in a way, but it wasn't a cup that you hold in your hand. It wasn't a manufactured cup. It was the Holy Grail of the body that the perpetual life force currents ran through. And we all have one. It's the internal Holy Grail. There has been a quest for literally millions of years. Since the first seeding, the fallen angelics have been questing to get control of Earth's Templar in order to use it to get control of the crystal pylon temples and the halls of Amente stargates, so they could use them to get control of this time matrix. It's a big drama we're a part of. Now, in the present cycle that we're in, which is like, they call it the final conflict battle. Sounds like something you'd find on sci-fi, First wave and final conflict, that kind of thing. We are in the middle of what was intended to be, since the Atlantian period, the final conflict. And the fallen angelics were quite confident that they were going to come in here and simply take over. they'd use us in the process. Whoever they could get. This is where the New Age movement fits in. Lots of people are talking to things up there that they can't see nowadays, because things out there are talking to them. There is a huge movement, and it was part of the Atlantean conspiracy, to, right before it was time for the stellar activation, there would be certain chosen ones selected, same ones that were in the other time vectors that they messed with and selected, to bring through information that would motivate groups of people to do energy work with reverse matrix coding. But of course the people wouldn't know it. They wouldn't know that they were running reverse fire letter sequences, because they wouldn't be taught about fire letter sequences. They wouldn't be taught the technical stuff that goes with this. They would simply be taught to, if you love God and you want your spirituality, here, activate this, here, open that, right? Here's how you do planetary grid work. This is what's going on in the New Age movement. It's about, at this point, about 90% fallen angelic communication. And that's really sad, because at certain points, our guys were trying to communicate to that way. But at this point, they can't even encourage people to develop channeling skills unless they'll do it with the Maharic seal. Because you start channeling, you're going to get everybody and their brother up there. They're going to be standing in line. Oh, a body, right? They're interested in infiltrating our biofields to motivate us to run reverse matrix codes into the planetary grids. Because if we do this, we're helping them fulfill their agenda. If they can get enough of reverse matrix coding in the planetary grids, they will not only be able to create pole shift, which they'll do on their own without us doing that, but it will be easy for them to come in. What they're planning to do is they will create pole shift. They've already prepared the grids through the New Age movement, having reverse matrix codes run. After the dust settles after pole shift, then they'll bring in their chosen ones that they evac out, the little groups. And there's these little groups. Galactic Federation's running a really nice evacuation program, last time I heard. These people are going to take certain humans off the planet, make sure they have the reverse matrix coding in their DNA, and then they're going to put them back on to run the rest of the grids in reverse until it hits critical mass, and then they're going to get wiped out. The people they put back on to resettle, they know that. They're expendable. They're going to put them back on to get the grids running full in reverse. It'll again cause pole shift, which will change the orbital alignment, and it'll put it in alignment with Nibiru. Then the humans are gone again, even the chosen ones. They're expendable. This is what chosen one people don't realize. They're being used. If you're dealing with guardian groups, everybody's chosen, okay? Everybody's welcome as part of the cosmic family. So these chosen ones groups that are being set up to run reverse matrix coding into the grids. They are then expendable, where by doing so, they will put the place into a reverse pole spin to finalize it. Literally, the orbital alignment of the planet will change, and this will take a number of years. They'll put the resettlement communities back on. If it takes 200 years to recode those full grids into reverse, they'll stay there that long. Then it will create the pole shift. They'll let the humans they put back on die, because they don't want them. What they want is the planet for themselves and the races they have created. There are races that are part them, that are with us now, that are part human. And some of them have incarnations out of those matrices, like they're not even human souls in them anymore. But these people are being used too, is what they don't realize. These are the Illuminati races. They don't realize that, yeah, you might get to be on the evac team, and they're going to have you as a resettlement team after they get, after they get the rest of the humans off the planet. But you're only there for a purpose, to get critical mass saturation or the reversal on the grids, and then you're going to be left sitting there when the place rolls. So then they can come in and take it and go from there to try to get the crystal pylon temples of inner earth. This is the whole drama that's going on, and we're sitting right in the middle of it. So there's a lot to learn to get to the point where your mind goes, oh my God, there is a problem, isn't there? Because one of the greatest things in the New Age movement, that is one of the things that makes me want to bite. I mean, if I were going to get aggravated, it's hard to really get me aggravated, but something that I just want to scream when people throw it at me is, we don't have to worry about any of that. Oh, you're in polarity consciousness because you think there's bad things out there. It's all perfect. We're in Christ consciousness. And this is how it's like this space cadet attitude that, meanwhile, you look in their eyes and they're focused over here someplace. There's this real terrified of anything negative. Well, Christ conscious beings don't think about negative things. They just know they have the power to create positive. I pretend it's not there, therefore it isn't. Christ consciousness doesn't work that way. They're being taught to think it does work that way. Why? Because if they don't think there's a problem, they're not going to do anything to solve it. Because they're going to reject the teachings that are brought in to how to solve that problem. This is one of the things I've run into in the past 2 years since I started bringing this material out. I have been hit with it all over the place. And you know what's so funny? These wonderfully Christ-conscious beings that have 12 strands or maybe 14 of DNA activated can be the nastiest people when they get aggravated. Oh, they curse at you and call you names. And, I mean, my gracious, this is a spiritual Christ-conscious activated being, yeah, right? It's like, look at the product, look at yourself. You're calling yourself, this is like testimony here. What did you just say? There is a nastiness that some of these people can throw. They'll be sweet to your face as long as everything's going the way they want it to. But as soon as you say something that confronts their very fragile little belief system, they get very nasty. That shift where they can get very nasty can indicate two things. One, a human that's so attached to it having to be safe because they're terrified if it's not, that they get nasty. Or, more likely, it isn't even a human reacting that way. They have field infiltration because they've opened their hearts without thinking about putting up their Maharic seal, and they have company. And they're the ones that get nasty. I have seen people shift, look me in the eye, they seem like normal people, say something that confronts that light, love, and clueless thing that we call it, and this nastiness comes through, and just like with a real mean, I hate you feel, like just the energy shifts where you know that they just love to zap you. If they had the rod or the staff, they'd use it to make you disappear painfully, hopefully. This isn't even the human aspect of them. This is when you start to get to see what the consciousness of a Drac or an Anunnaki fallen angelic looks like. All right, so the humans are being played on in the New Age movement. And the funny thing is, everybody thinks the New Age movement was started to be a good thing. It started, the new consciousness coming in, all this wonderful fluff that they teach us. It was actually, now our guys got involved to try to turn it into a good thing, but it was originally part of the Atlantian conspiracy. It was known that they would start a movement of contact when it got near the time for the stellar activation cycle, so they could get their legions lined up here, and they could get control of human bodies who had enough of the codes that they could reverse the matrix on their DNA template. They had the fire codes that went with the Earth's templates. You take a human body, you infiltrate its field, get into its DNA template. There's something called monadic reversal. Okay? The monad is basically your D8 core. It's like one of the cores of the DNA template. Monadic reversal. If you can get to that core of the template, if you can get to strand 12, which they can't get to because that's protected with the Christos frequency, D8's the next level to get it at. If they go for the 8th strand, if they can get it running fully in reverse, and then a couple other strands, get the fire letters running in reverse, it will flip over the whole matrix, and you'll have your DNA running in reverse, fire letter codes. What it does to you as a person is totally mess up everything, because you will have to go through all sorts of incarnational cycles or stay on planet until you can undo that, unless you get bioregenesis to fix it. But once it's done, it's extremely difficult. It will kill the body to put it back. So you would have to incarnate to begin working on solving the problem if you had full monadic reversal. What they're doing with people, a lot of the healing modalities, that are coming out these days, even some of the good ones that used to be good healing modalities, they're using them to transmit the frequencies through people. If you take a healer who didn't know how to protect their fields, and they don't know, they can't see beyond D4, a lot of them, most people that are working with healing that see things are seeing through the D4 spectrum. You can get them from D6. You can't even, they won't even be able to tell that something is in their field messing with them. You start to transmit. You give them that monadic reversal by progressively transmitting the opposite frequencies that belong in their DNA templates, and it'll put their strands into reversal. When they do healing work, they're transmitting that to the people they're healing. They don't know it. They wouldn't ever do it if they knew. There's been progressive saturation here with the attempt of putting people into monadic reversal. Because there's two very useful things you can do once you monadically reverse a human being. A, you've got control now of the codes that match the planetary grids, which an Anunnaki alone can't access. A Drac alone can't access. They need human beings because we have the codes that correspond to the grids. Put it in monadic reversal, now you have the opposite codes. So you can access the grids through the co-resonance of the having the same pattern and then its opposite. and then just run it in reverse. This is why they have been infiltrating. This is why they did the New Age movement. It was to get everybody to channel and not even ask for a resume as far as who you were talking to. These days, this is why I call it, I don't mean to insult people, but I call it the light, love, and clueless movement, because they don't want to know who it might be they're talking to, because they're just so happy they're talking to somebody, you know? And hey, we've been down here alone for a long time with the psychic abilities shut off. We've been lonesome, a lonesome race that's being played on. All right? So if something comes in and says, I am Archangel Joe, you know, I'm wonderful and I love you dearly. We've you know, always served your race and we're here to help you now. And they're really sweet about it. Most humans are like, wow, I'm talking to angels. And all of a sudden the whole life changes, of course. They're going to be angel channels, you know? Once you've got that connection, you don't ever want to lose it. They're playing on the fact that we've been lonesome here. They're playing on the fact that we do have the ability to channel our higher selves and other things, good things, if we know how to channel safely, if we know how to seal our biofields. Channeling itself is a natural attribute of human consciousness. However, if you do it without your field sealed with the D12 frequency, you're asking, you're wearing a sign on your astral body saying, take me, vacant. Because right now, bodies are primo real estate. You want to take over this planet, you're the density 2 body, you can project part of yourself into this body and get it to run around and do what you want with it. If it serves their purposes, they will let the personality who's in there stay. And they will simply point them. They'll guide them. They'll be their voice of spiritual wisdom. And they'll tell them where to go and what to run, as far as the frequencies. If the body's real valuable, and they just want to get the person out of the way, or if the person is a little too shrewd, so they're saying, wait a minute, I don't know if I want to do that. You know, you're telling me to go over and do that, and that's not a nice thing to do to that person, and maybe I don't want to do that. When the questions start happening, that's when, okay, personality's getting in the way, then they'll go for body snatch, which means they will force a critical mass of their energy into the body template, into the DNA template, and force out the original soul that inhabited it. That's called possession. Okay? If they don't do monadic reversal on the DNA code, they can't do possession. So they usually build up with subtle contact first. Then they will go into field infiltration, coming into the astral field and the closer fields. Then they'll move in to the small parts of the strands that hold miasms, because miasms are reversed matrix antiparticles in the particle field. It's a reversal pattern. They can attach to the miasms, and from there they try to contaminate and expand the miasms and work out into the point where they got control of strands. Once they get control of enough strands, they can literally force out the person who was born into that body. And that is happening at an alarming rate right now. It used to happen in ancient Egypt. It's kind of funny. Psychology says, oh, that stuff's not real, that doesn't exist. Boy, they don't remember the ancient Egyptian times, obviously. Because in ancient Egypt, there was so much problems because there were different vortices and things open. The D2, the elemental vortice, which goes into the second dimensional frequencies, that was frequently opened in the ancient Egyptian times. And all sorts of creatures and things would come out there. They'd be two-dimensional, where they'd be ghost images, but usually dark shadow ghost images. And they had shape. I mean, some of them were draconian-looking, some of them were people-looking, but they were very negative and they had very convoluted, twisted consciousness. They would attach to people's fields all over the place, and they would get in the bodies all over the place. So if a person came into a mystical school, preschool was like taking a shower. Okay, call out the ones who know how to bounce the things out. So we do boogie bouncing, you know? You would run the frequencies through the field, get the field up high enough where they can't stand high frequency, the ones from D2. So you'd learn to clear the fields of persons by they couldn't hold a higher frequency themselves because the thing was repressing their own DNA template activation. But a person whose fields were cleared and sealed at least to the higher levels, you couldn't even seal it to D12 back in ancient Egypt because the Maharata current wasn't running in the grids. But you could at least seal it to about D11 and just watch it real close. So the priests, or what they would call the priests, they would be the ones that made sure their field integrity was there. And they would go in and they would do these psychic battles with them. And sometimes the people would live and sometimes the people wouldn't. It depended on how far into the template the things got. You know, the boogies, as we call them, you know. So these things that were a part of our ancient history are a part of our reality right now. But our psychology and our sciences have convinced us to, oh, you know, that's the old wives' tale stuff. Nobody believes that. Hey, if we don't believe it, we're not going to worry about it, are we? It's just going to happen. Guess who's helping the scientists with that one? There's a whole picture that's going on. That the solution to the whole picture is simply angelic humans doing what they came to do in the first place, fulfilling the divine commission, which was doing the planetary Christos realignment mission, which is done by running the round tables. It's that easy. You don't need to call out the big guns and have space battles and all that kind of stuff to change this. If we can get enough people together to run the frequencies, and the procedures are not that hard. It's not hard to run a rainbow round table. The hardest thing is realizing you have a tribal shield and activating it. We ran through that yesterday, and that was not a hard procedure. Simply knowing the parts and how to use the mind to activate them. If we can get enough people in enough locations running the rainbow rounds, we will be able to undo a lot of the damage they've already done. Now, we couldn't do this just alone. There's a couple things that have to be fixed, or even that won't work. One of them goes back to a period in history that I've mentioned a few times before, 25,500 BC. In 25,500 BC, a thing began. The thing was called the Lucifer Rebellion. Thank you. The Lucifer Rebellion was an event that began on Nibiru, which is that planet that dips into density 1 and then goes back into density 2 orbital cycles. That's the home of the Anunnaki, one of the homes of them. The Anunnaki come from, actually I'm not going to use this yet. I'm going to talk for a bit more. We'll get to those in a little while. I'm going to sit for a second. Does it bother anybody if I sit on this chair? It's a little higher. So I don't think I'll be invisible to you guys back there. But the Lucifer Rebellion is key to understanding what's taken place here. The word Lucifer came out of, I think I described this yesterday. It's an Anunnaki family name. It's a combining of two different groups of Anunnaki. One was the Marduk-Satane family of Anunnaki, and the other was the Thoth-Enki Lilitan family. They became what's known as the Luciferians. All right, and there were other races created from them. Well, in 25,500 BC, the Marduk family of the Anunnaki took control of Nibiru. Before, Nibiru had been in control of by certain groups of Anunnaki, the Thoth-Enki ones particularly, that had been working the Emerald Covenant. The Emerald Covenant is the peace treaty. It's a coevolution treaty for this time matrix that says everybody will be nice to each other and we'll co-evolve here. It's the Founders Treaty. When the Marduk family got control of Nibiru from the then peaceful Thoth-Enki family, they began a campaign of dominion, spreading it through different systems. And one of the main systems they've always been after has been Earth. There was a thing that went down during the period just after 25,500 BC. Now, in 25,500 BC, this was a key time. It wasn't a stellar activation cycle time, but it was a little bit before there was going to be one. 22,326 BC was the next due stellar activation cycle. So they were aiming for having control of the planetary grids by the time the 22,326 BC stellar activation cycle happened, because they can only fully reverse the matrix on the planet during a stellar activation cycle. That's the only time they could possibly run critical mass fire letter reversal to create the orbital reversal that they're looking for. So their conquest began in 25,500 BC when they got full control of the Nibiruan grids. They created a system that is run partially by outer technologies rather than just energy running. There's physical technologies that go with some of this. There are apparatus on Nibiru that are part of a crystal network. And again, they know how to use selenite rods and things like that too. There's a type of technology called photoradionic technology that utilizes selenite rods, and it's a type of photonic conversion energy that has to do with energy vibration ratios. It's a pretty complicated thing to try to explain as far as in terms of physics goes, and I wouldn't do it justice yet. By the time the book is done, we probably will have at least a decent explanation. But the photoradionic technologies that utilize large types of crystal, sometimes rock, it depends on what you're trying to do, they have capacity to do tremendous good and also tremendous harm. On Nibiru, they set up, 25,500 BC, they set up a system of crystal complexes. They're not the same type as the crystal pylon temples that run, the planetary temple are here. They're set up in a little bit different way. They're not right in the stargates, but it's basically the same type of technology. But it was to be used for negative purposes. It was to be used for dominion purposes. So they set up the grid, a crystal grid, on Nibiru. Then they used that grid to create a reversal in part of their Merkaba spiral that connects into the solar spiral, the D4 solar gate. Now Earth's connected to the D4 solar gate as well. They were able to run, because there was enough frequency on the planet at the time, enough reversed fire letters in the damaged grids, that they could progressively link that frequency from Nibiru through the solar gate and down into Earth's grids. By anchoring that system, they actually managed to create a tilt, not a pole shift, but just a minor tilt in the natural Merkaba axis of the planet, where they literally, if you looked at, I don't have a diagram of this, but I would have liked to, but we didn't get there yet. If you look at the sun as being here, and Earth as being here, and there's a Merkaba field coming from Earth with its little point connecting to the sun, and then you have Nibiru over here with its own little Merkaba field connecting to the sun. What they were able to do with this crystal network was take that cone sitting on top of the Earth circle, the little Merkaba field, and move its axis just slightly to where it plugged into Nibiru. So literally, our solar currents run down through Nibiru. They pick up a reverse matrix from the Nibiruan grids. There was only one way they could do something like that, was to anchor enough of the reverse frequency here. They had to do it here, and they had to do it on parallel Earth, which is like the reflection system to ours, the antiparticle universe. So they put in 2 installments of crystal grids, a circle of 12 selenite rods, their own, that they had actually stolen from Sirius B, because Sirius B is the place where they get most of the selenite, crystal rods. They created a circle of crystal rods. Here, it was placed in the area we call Stonehenge now. Before there were stones there were crystals there. In 25,500 BC, there was an installment brought in. And it wasn't just brought in secretly. There were negotiations made with the Atlanteans. He said, look at all the advantages you can have. We have this technology that will really, really help you. You'll be able to have much more gate access power and all sorts of nice things. It was a technological advancement. It was a Trojan horse is what it was. The Atlanteans didn't even realize what hit them when they allowed this to be put in. They helped put it in. When they set up the system here, there was also teams that were setting up a counterpart system in parallel Earth. So the frequencies would actually run through parallel and through this Earth and back and forth. What it did was hold a reverse matrix code on the D1, 2, and 3 frequencies, or at least part of them. They weren't able to fully overload the grids, or we'd be in full reversal by now. But there was this setup put in. It was called the Nibiruan Dyadic Crystal Grid that would run frequency from parallel Earth on a reverse matrix through and continually contaminate Earth's grids with reverse codings. And they had figured that by the 22,326 BC stellar activation cycle, that there would be enough code saturation by using this apparatus that that would be the final conflict. That would be the grand hurrah. Well, we ended up in a stalemate in 22,326 BC because they went in for the final kill. Our guys knew they were going to, and they seeded a race called the E-yon E, which are it's another branch of the Indigo Children, of the Magi King lines. But they were a group of they called them E-yon E, which means of the Eonis, which are the Ascendant Masters, because they were a team of them that carried like 48-strand DNA templates. They were the highest level of them. They were Ascendant Masters that came in to try to stop this from happening. What they were trying to do then was to disarm the Nibiruan Dyadic Crystal Grid. So when the stellar activation cycle happened, they couldn't use it to put the place into full reversal. And it's really funny, because as time went on, that didn't happen then. There was something called the E-yon E massacre that happened in 22,326 BC. And we were invaded because someone we had trusted for a very, very long time, a being that was out of the Toth Enki family of Anunnaki. Some of the Anunnaki had joined the Emerald Covenant in 246,000 BC on its restatement down here at that time. There was a being named Thoth. Now, Thoth had done a bioregenesis program that allowed him to pick up part of the 12th strand, because this they were trying to bioregenerate the Anunnaki so they can get their Christos coding back, because if you get your Christos coding back, you start to get your consciousness back in order where you're not acting like maniacs down here. So Thoth had always been part of a bioregenesis program. That bioregenesis program started in 155,000 BC. So he was highly respected. He was an Anunnaki who made it. He was an example to show what they could become, to show it was worth working with them to bioregenerate them. Even though they had egos the size of the universe and were totally race supremacist, they needed some re-education, but they needed template reversal back to a normal Christos pattern. Now, Thoth had reached a level of bioregenesis that was up, it was 11.5 strands, which is not quite the whole 12th strand yet. It's half of the 12th strand. There was an opportunity that was offered by the Anu Elohim matrix up in D11. They had found a way to use that configuration of DNA to block the other half of the strand, so they never got the 12th strand, and then to reverse it from 11.5 down. So they could actually pull D13 current, which is a benign current from the primal light fields, that it's not polarized. They could actually figure out a way to polarize D13 current through a DNA template by blocking out half of the codes on what would have been the 12th strand. Well, in his bioregenesis program, Thoth was up to strand 11.5, and he was offered an opportunity to serve as one of the leaders of a movement of the United Anunnaki Legions, because they were going to try to pull together all the Anunnaki races. He was under a lot of pressure, and there was a lot of past affiliations, that there was a lot of pressure. It was a decision that didn't come easy to this being. What he had established at strand 11.5, you can be immortal at that point. You cannot fully ascend out of the time matrix and go into prematter yet. You need a full 12th strand or more to do that. But you can fully sustain the body perpetually. But you can't ascend. Okay? So immortal is a step toward ascension, but it's not the end of the line. Thoth is immortal. There's another immortal that's famous in our history, and his name is Enoch. Enoch was also an Anunnaki, but he incarnated, actually he wasn't an Anunnaki to start, he was out of the fallen Anu Elohim matrix. A group of them that wanted to go back into the light, and they created what was called the Yod-He-Vod-He host matrix, which was a way to plug into the Brenau Rishi families, so they had a way to evolve out. They would get their coding back. So Enoch was also like Thoth, except Enoch started out as a being who went back into the light, and then he came down into incarnation through the Sirius A Anunnaki. The Sirius A Anunnaki are different than the Nibiruan Anunnaki. Sirius A Anunnaki are called the bipedal dolphin people. Some people have had experiences with the dolphin people, and I've heard, like in the UFO movement, God, these things are really strange looking. They're like, big, like hunched over, like they look like dolphins on feet. You know what I mean? And I remember when somebody said that to me, they were asking me, "Do you know what this kind of ET is?" And I don't know. No, I don't know. Because I didn't have the descriptions of what they looked like at that point. And when they explained to me, these are the bipedal dolphin people. These are Anunnaki, and they're associated with Andromeda and with Sirius A. And they're the real race supremacists. They don't even like the other Anunnaki, because the other Anunnaki, which we call the Anu Anunnaki, they're the ones that got involved with some of the Draconian races, and they crossed with different various Draconians, so they're Anunnaki plus Draconian, so they're like half fallen Anu Elohim, half fallen Seraphim. This is the Thoth Enki families. Any of the Enki, Enlil, Anu, the Sumerian god stuff, those are the half Anunnaki, half Drac ones. Then you have the Sirius A Anunnaki. They're called the Jehovah's. All right? Silence. The word Jehovah came out of the name Giovanni. Giovanni was the name of one of the fallen Anu Elohim matrices. Giovanni split. Some of them went into the Yod-He-Vod-He host matrix, where they wanted to go back into the light. Others of them didn't. They were the creators of the Anunnaki race. They created them right after humans were created to be the avengers of Anu, to go destroy the human race so they could take their place. So there's a long history here and some very interesting names and words. But anyway, we'll get into Giovanni and Jehovah a little bit more this afternoon. For now, we come back to 25,500 BC, the Lucifer Rebellion, and the fact that it was aiming for the 22,326 BC due stellar activation cycle. In 22,340 BC, our good buddy Thoth, who the universe was very proud of and the founders loved dearly because of all he had done to try to help rehabilitate the Anunnaki races, he caved into pressure, and he orchestrated something we call the Great Deception. Because he was so trusted, he was allowed into the colonies of the EOMC, the Ascended Masters groups that had come here. They had come here to use Stargate 6 to open it. It's something called the Halls of Amareya Passage. It's in Stargate 6. It runs from Sirius B down into Earth. It's like a passage connected to the main passages. They were going to use it to run enough frequency to override the Nibiru and Diodic crystal grid, where it was coming up in what is now the area of Stonehenge. Thoth was supposed to assist in that process. He was also given Cloister Tour Plate 11. Now these plates are discs. They're small discs that store all of the information that has to do with the race history here, the planetary history, but also the race history that went up further into the higher harmonics. He was supposed to translate verbally, not auditory, not in written form, because there was too much corruption to put it in written form on the planet then. He was supposed to take collectives of the Anu Melchizedek races, which were half human, half Anunnaki, and he was supposed to teach them the truth, the law of one. He was supposed to teach them the Maharata realities, the inner Christos. He was supposed to begin to teach them these things. Another little thing about the Cloister Tour plates, these are frequency holders and transmitters. They can also transmit frequency that activates something else called a signet shield. There are 12 Cloister Tour plates that were created at the same time as 12 signet shields. These look like hubcaps. Okay, they're bigger than the plates. You have the small plate, then you have a signet shield. The signet shields were given to the angelic human races in 2,460 BC, no, 246,000 BC, 246,000 BC. As part of the Emerald Covenant, they're remote activators for the stargates. Okay, you can't activate the shield without the plate that goes with it. Thoth was entrusted with plate 11 in order to transmit information to help the Anu Melchizedek races, some of them, the ones that weren't totally corrupt at that point, to go into the light and to start, going into bioregenesis. He made a decision to side with the rest of his families, with the Enki family. We call it Thoth Enki because that is a particular group. Thoth Enki is the Enki Anunnaki family that crossed with the Zephelium Draconians, which are the ones that created the Zetas. So you can just be like Thoth Enki Zeta races. All right. Then there's the Marduk lines that cross with the Omicron Draconians, which are the ones that kind of look like dragons. So there's different families of Anunnaki up there. Thoth caved into the pressure of the thought of a united Anunnaki nation, where all these usually warring factions of Anunnaki, bunches of them were agreeing to come back together, and they were going to create a new paradise, and they were going to take good care of this time matrix, so I guess it was okay to take it over. He betrayed the founders, and he betrayed everyone who had trusted him, and he had, for thousands of years, he had worked the Emerald Covenant and done tremendous things for the races, so he was very well loved. But he himself came in to the EOMC colonies. The EOMC colonies were on what was the remainder of the Lemurian continent. There wasn't much left of the Lemurian continent after it was destroyed in 50,000 BC, but there were some island nations left. The EOMC colony was put on the area where the activator site for Stargate 12 was. Not the gate, but the activator site, the Q site, which are even more important than the sites themselves because you can't activate the site unless you activate the activator site first, the Q site. This area is now Kauai, Hawaii. They put the colony there because they needed to activate Gate 12 activator site and connect it to the Halls of Amareya D6 Stargate to run enough frequency through to break the Nibiru and Diodic crystal grid link. And that's what they were trying to do. Thoth came in and handpicked a few Anu Melchizedek priests, got them in because he was trusted, got them into the priest caste that were working with the Templar mechanics. And even though they're Anu Melchizedek, we weren't prejudiced against Anu Melchizedeks. As long as they were working the Emerald Covenant and could be trusted, they were welcome too to help with the planetary grids. He got them in to an 11-year program, or it was like 10 or 11-year program, of progressively working up to the point, as a Melchizedek priest, where they would be able to go to the island, the hidden city on the island, and work the big project, which was to break Nibiruan hold on the grids. And he got a group of priests in, and Melchizedek priests, and they sabotaged the whole mission. And then Thoth came in himself when it all went to heck. There were raids that came in directly from Nibiru, and Thoth was with one of them that landed in the E-yon E, on the E-yon E settlement. He gave them an opportunity, the E-yon E priests, bless you. They were given the opportunity they needed female breeders on Nibiru to get the codes. So the E-yon E women were offered an opportunity. If you don't want your husbands tortured and killed and sent over as basically fish bait to the corrupt Atlantian temples, we'll let them go, but you come with us. Thoth offered that deal. This is a good example of how wonderful things and horrible things can live in the same body. A bunch of the E-yon E women went to try to save their husbands. It was even worse, though, because the great deception came in here. They were told, now we were all isolated, and I say we because I was there. That was one of my incarnational places. We came into an experience where all of a sudden there are spaceships coming from everywhere, and they're landing on the island, and they're Nibiruan spaceships. Everybody's scattering, like, oh no, what happened? They had jammed our communication lines to the inner Earth races and to Sirius B, which were our main outposts that we could receive off-planet information. We were told that they had control of the planet itself, that they'd taken the whole thing already. We were told that Alcyone Council, that's the Palladian Council, that works with Sirius B and the rest of them, had surrendered because they had won certain battles. We would have been left to believe that there was nothing left. And they had said, if you don't agree to come with us, we'll not only torture your husbands, we're going to blow up the whole place because we don't need it. We'll get inner Earth, and then we'll destroy all the races on the face of the planet. So if you women of the E-yon E care about the other life forms on this planet, you'll agree to be our breeders. You'll agree to come to Nibiru with us, because if you don't, we'll do horrible things to this planet. We were under the understanding that, this is really bad. They have control of the whole thing. And without Alcyone Council to hold Gate 5, that meant they had Gate 5, not just Gate 4. That meant that the only hope of fixing anything was to stay alive long enough to try to figure out what to do next. So a bunch of the E-yon E women, because they thought that that's the way the reality was, the way it had been painted, they went with them to Nibiru to be breeders. But they didn't get to go before they got to be breeders. They had to make sure they were pregnant. There was a selection that was done. Only the best of them were chosen. Boy, did that imprint come through with us now. I think women get their total insecurity about how they look because they were treated like meat. Only the ones that had the right genetic characteristics, the right eye color, the right hair color, the right proportions, were allowed to even be selected. You got to remember, E-yon E women were guardian women. They also came in as part of what's called a gender twin set. They came in with their twins, something called the Maharic twins, which are their D12 level Christos twins. They're genetically bonded together, E-yon E twins. Male and female couples, they come in at the same time, and they have strand 1 through 6 polarized and separate, but strands 7 through 12 are bonded. So they're literally one being when you get to D7. They split up the E-yon E gender twin couples, and they forced the women to become breeders of Anunnaki. They raped them when necessary. If they liked one that didn't want to play the selection thing, go ahead, kill me and my mate, I don't care, we hate you, that kind of thing. You're doing something terrible, we're not going to help you. They would rape them instead, and if they happened to be able to get them to conceive, they would keep them tied up until they delivered. The deception was so horrible, it just sent ripples all the way up through the time matrix, because this person had been trusted. And it's like, he was so good when he was good, but when he went bad, boy did he go bad. Yeah.
Drunvalo trusted Toth too.
Toth is Drunvalo's teacher.
Yeah.
Yep. Check out what he does with Merkaba.
About the Toth's emerald tablet.
Yes, I'm getting to that. This is part of the Great Deception. Now remember, Toth had in his possession Cloister Duratura Plate 11, which was the activator disc for Shield 11 that could activate the activator site for Stargate 11, which is the one they want, because that's the one they want to close everything down at the D11 level, and they want to run it from a reverse matrix D11. He stole the Cloister Duratura Plate. And first, to make it easier for the corrupt Atlantean and Melchizedek priests in the temples, he wrote the Emerald Tablets. He put a physical written translation, and he gave them the books. And there was a lot more than the Atlantean tablets that are coming, the Emerald Tablets that are coming through now. They're just little pieces. He translated volumes of stuff on Templar mechanics and how it works, so the corrupt Anu Melchizedek priest caste could use it to get final control over the grids. This is what the Emerald Tablet physical translations were for. They were taken off a good source, but that he had promised to never, I mean, if he was going to be able to use this plate, he was not supposed to commit it to writing because of the Anu Melchizedeks who were trying to take over the planet. If they got access to some of this stuff, it was very, very dangerous. They could they would know how to reverse the things in the grids. So he did that big boo-boo, and he did the Emerald Tablets to give to the Atlantean priest caste so they could finish their takeover job. The worst thing that he did, however, was the fact of the betrayal he did on the Magi lines there, because this is where we started to get our gene codes really messed up with Anunnaki overlays in them. The E-yon E women were taken, the ones that could conceive, were taken to Nibiru, and they were given husbands. They were assigned husbands. Toth was also one of them. He chose one of the high-coded E-yon E women to take as his forced wife. And they were taken to Nibiru, and might not have been so bad if there wasn't the Great Rebellion, because they were taken under the promise that their husbands would not be harmed, and that they would not hurt the planet, they would not wipe it out like they had said if we didn't cooperate. We found out, once the women were there, they found out by certain conduits of information that they could still pick up from, interdimensional communication, that they had hunted the husbands, and they had taken them, they had castrated many of them. They had taken them to the Atlantean temples, and because the husbands were highly coded too, they had used them as living electrical posts that they could run frequency through to access grids until it fried them. Some of them escaped. Not many got out that time. That was almost the decimation of the Grail Lines again, where they had to be rebuilt after that. So it's not that I have any personal thing against Toth or anybody that likes Toth. When you start to see the history that has gone down here, you get a lot more wise about who you might be talking to in the New Age movement. Toth has stayed in that association until 1992, when something called the Palladian-Syrian agreements were made, where we finally got some of the Anunnaki to agree to not come in here and do the devastation. That was made before they really knew for sure whether a stellar activation cycle would fully commence. That wouldn't be known until 1998, when the grids got up high enough. If they got up high enough, they could anchor the stellar bridge. They entered these agreements in 1992, Syrian-Palladian agreements. Okay, we'll be nice, we'll enter the Emerald Covenant. Yeah, so you're not going to stop us from talking to people and that kind of stuff, right? We'll help them ascend, right? Yeah. Well, in January 2000, when the grids activated, and we knew we were going into stellar activation, they changed their mind. They decided now's our chance. Now that it's certain that it's going into stellar activation, we can't pass up this chance. Some of them stayed in the Emerald Covenant. Some of them broke it. Toth's group broke it. So he is back over in that agenda. Now this agenda that started in 25,500 BC has progressed. It progressed from that point. It progressed up into the 22,326 BC EOMC massacre. And then it progressed up further. There was another outbreak of the whole bunch of them. Oh, well, I didn't finish the stalemate part. What happened in 22,326 BC, why we're still here to talk about it, is they decimated the EOMC civilization. But we had managed to do enough with the grids to get the gates to shut down. It went into pole shift again. It wasn't as bad as some of the others, but it went into pole shift again. But it shut down the gates. They need the gates open to finish what they had planned to do. So fortunately, we got to be able to close the gates. If that hadn't happened, they would have come in for the kill then. But it was left as a stalemate till the next stellar activation cycle. That's when it would be finished. This is the next stellar activation cycle. Now, after the gates were closed, forced closed, that created the conditions that led up to, there was a glacial period after that. If you look at historical records, it went from somewhere, I think they placed around 21,000 BC up till about 14,000 BC. That was actually amplified in 20,000 BC when they took what was happening with the grids and made it even worse for another reason that we'll get into in the stuff later this afternoon that had to do with Gate 11 and the quest for Gate 11. But since the stalemate of the EOMC massacre in 22,326 BC, you had an interesting condition. You had guardians hanging on to Shield 11, right? The activator for Gate 11. You had Toth and his group hanging on to CDD Plate 11. We finally stole it back in 1999. This is why they didn't let me release any information on the plates until after November of 1999, because it was still trying to get the last plate back. 11. That was 11. And they needed 11 for the activator for the shield for Site 11, because what the basic thing is that the Anunnaki racists want to do is they want to get control of Earth's planetary grids under a reverse D11 code. That means it can run 11 dimensions of frequency, but it will run it on a reverse matrix fire letter sequence, just like Nibiru. Now the Dracs hate this. The Dracs have 10 code DNA. They can't live on an 11 code planet. They want to get rid of the Anunnaki, and they want to take over from Gate 10. We'll get into where these gates are located, and it's kind of amusing when you start to say, oh, that's why there's still problems over there. Okay? Gate 10 and 11 have been like the primo gates. They want to get rid of Gate 12, and there's two different groups that want to take over, 111, 110. So there's been this whole chain of things happening with the quest for Cloister Door Tour Plate 10 and Shield 10, but that has been secured. Actually, it landed in the activator plate landed in Drac hands somewhere. They haven't given me the whole history on the Drac side yet, because right now the Dracs are the ones to worry about less. It's the Anunnaki that are coming in for the kill big time now, and now they've all joined forces. So the real ones that they've given me the history, because this is where the big deception is happening. Most of the people talking to people in the New Age movement are Anunnaki. You know, that's and you know, I mean, things like Archangel Michael. This is not an angel. You know, some angels are. There's the Archangel Gabriel matrix. They're okay. They're affiliated. They're Anunnaki. They are Anunnaki, but they're okay. They didn't go over into the negative agenda. They stayed in the Emerald Covenant agenda. So we're not saying that all Anunnaki are bad. They were created for a negative purpose, and they have genetic problems because of it. They were created on a reverse matrix, and they were created to wipe out humans. But that doesn't mean, as individuals, some of them choose to not do that. And there have been. That's why the bioregenesis programs have been there. But right now, in the New Age movement, you have 90% Anunnaki. You don't have too many Dracs in the New Age movement. You have them in the UFO movement. So these two movements, this is the two agendas, okay? You have little crossovers in between, but the major saturations are UFO movement equals Drac, and New Age movement equals Anunnaki. You know? It's like, does anybody equal good guys up here? Yeah. There are good guys working through each of them as well, trying to reach the people and get them disentangled. But all this stuff is a very ancient problem that took place. It's only recent stuff has been happening since 25,500 BC. The big thing that was the problem in 25,500 BC was between that point and 22,326 BC, Nibiru got control of Stargate 4, so the solar Stargate, which is when the stellar bridge, or that frequency pillar, the Maharata pillar, comes down and anchors into the planet during a stellar activation cycle. It comes down through a chain of stargates. It comes down through the Lyra gates. It goes from the Aramatena gate, then into the Avion gate at D11, then into the D10 Vega gate, then into the D9 Andromeda gate, D8 Orion gate, D7 Arcturus gate, D6 Sirius B gate, D5 Palladian gate, D4 Solar gate. That's where we got a problem, because they have the ability to block that frequency from coming through and to reverse it. If they leave that gate, they have that solar spiral now that leads into Earth. If they don't release it, it's running right now on reverse fire letter sequences, part of it. Its electrical spiral is running reverse. Its magnetic is still all right. But if that isn't released and those fire letters don't go back in the solar Merkaba, in the Earth's connection to the solar Merkaba, if it doesn't go back into its natural alignment, it will create pole shift as the gates open, as the higher gates open. When there's enough frequency coming in, pushing in from the higher levels, and it just can't process through those fire letters. They know this. And they were supposed to, when they entered the Emerald Covenant again in 1992, the agreement was you have to, by 2000, hand over control of the solar gate, put it back in, guardian control like it was always supposed to be. You did steal it, remember? And they were supposed to return plate 11. Okay? This was part of the agreements. Well, they made the agreements. What happened from that period way back, there's a bunch of stuff in the middle that we'll get into this afternoon, because I have a chart that shows you this progression of something called the Atlantian conspiracy. It's mind-blowing. And these are just some of the little dates that fit into this. There's a chain of, I think there might be 30 of them on the list, of events that have taken place between now and 25,500 BC. I actually started at 50,000 BC when they went in and wiped out Lemuria. Okay? But it shows you this progression. What is Well, in 50,000 BC. That was even before the 25,500 BC. See, this stuff built since Seeding 3 was put here. As soon as we were put here, they started with the infiltration. The fallen angelics started with infiltration. But it really got into trouble from 25,500 BC on, because that's when they grabbed the solar spiral, which means they controlled half of the Giza teleport, because it was a teleport for a long time. Gate 4 opens into Giza. It's also a main access point to access other grid lines. And they have been using the Nibiru and Dyadic crystal grid location. Now we did manage to get the crystals out. We took the grid down, but we weren't able to get the one out of parallel Earth, because they already reversed the grids over there, and they control parallel Earth at this point. A lot of problems over there. They are using the parallel Earth set of crystals to control the area here that was keyed to them, even though we managed to come in, our guys managed to come in and get rid of them. I think it's 7,000, no, this was 5,900 BC. We pulled the final set of crystals out. We did it several times, but that was the last time that they even bothered putting them in. They can still run the grids from there. So Stonehenge and Giza are being used to anchor this planet to Nibiru. That has to be broken. And it's interesting because the Stonehenge location falls right on a line between 2 points in Earth's shields, Stargate 11 and Q-Site 11, the activator site in the gate. Because what they can do with that there is you have the frequency coming over. When Gate 11 activates, you have the frequency coming over from the Q-Site, the activator site. It'll pass through the Stonehenge grid, reverse its matrix, and activate Gate 11 on a reverse matrix. That's the plan. This is a plan that we have been trying to undo since the time it started. Now, we managed to create a stalemate in 22,326 BC. At that point, we got the gate shut down fast enough. It caused pole shift, but at least they didn't get the whole thing. At least they didn't take over. We wouldn't be here worrying about it now. Everything that has taken place since then, part of the history, part of the stories we know about, has been about this setup, about getting the Nibiru and Dyadic crystal grid. Now, actually, we're not going to make it dysfunctional. We can use it to our advantage if we can recode it on a frontwards fire letter sequence. It's a D11 grid. Okay, the program in the Nibiru Dadic crystal grid is a D11 program. There's one thing that will override that, a D12 program. Gate 12 and the Maharata current can be used to recalibrate it and flip it back over, where you can actually use it to enhance how the grids hold 12th dimensional frequency. That's the plan. Now the plan has to be done in several steps. We need to first, this is what the E-yon E were trying to do in 22,326 BC. You're supposed to use the Kauai, Hawaii, what's now Kauai, Hawaii location. That used to be in Lemuria. That was the Lemurian continent once upon a time. Use that location, which is Q site 12. That you activate that first, that'll activate gate 12, which is actually in France, in Montsegur. Okay? Use the Kauai location to activate gate 12 and link the activator site to the Sirius B gate, D6 gate. Stabilize the frequencies from the D6 level, which overrides the D4 level where the Nibiruans have it, and part of gate 5 is compromised by the part of the Alcyon Council called the Ashtar Command. It is the Nibiruan version of the Alcyon Council. They were once cooperative with us. Both Ashtar Command, Galactic Federation, these guys, at times, they would work the Emerald Covenant, but they are the Anunnaki versions, and they at times work with us and at times work totally in opposition on the Anunnaki agenda. So anyway, we were supposed to use gate 6 to link in the activator site 12, Q site 12, in Kauai. This is what we're going to do. This is why we're going to Kauai. Once that was done, the natural frequencies would run from Q site 12 into Montsegur gate 12. So we have gate 12 activated. Then the plan was to go to Q site 11 to pull the frequencies from gate 12 up to Q site 11. Okay? So this is why we're going to Ireland, because it's in Ireland. This has been the quest. This is why they were hiding a bunch of stuff. See, gate 11, Q site 11 and gate 11 were in Atlantis. They were in Lojas, Atlantis, northeastern Atlantis. Best way to hide something is to put it right under your nose and call it something else. Well, that actually draws attention to it. The best way is to rename it, make people think it's something else. If you're looking for a pen, but you're trained to think that that pen is actually an apple, and you see apple because you're looking at it and this is what you think it is, you're going to look somewhere else for the pen. Most of the Atlantean islands didn't sink in 9,558 BC. Portions of them did, but most of them didn't. The big secret was trying to hide what's going on with gate 11 and Q11. Gate 11 is in what's called the Vale of Pusey area in southern England, which is a place between Stonehenge and Avebury. Avebury, Avebury. Yeah, it's like right in between there. If you drew a line on a map, it's the central point. And it's also where there's a bunch of these white horses carved in chalk from the ancient days. All right, that's where gate 11 is. It's running. There is a line of energy that runs in the planetary shields that runs from that gate 11 through where Stonehenge is and then up into Ireland, where Q site 11 is. So what we were supposed to do is after we got the 12 setup activated, we didn't have to go to France because there's no problem with gate 12. It will run, once you activate Q site 12, it'll run the frequency right down into gate 12. But then we had to go up to Q site 11 and draw the frequency. So we'll be drawing frequency from France, from gate 12 of France up into Ireland at gate 11, or not gate 11, Q11. And then we have to go to England. And we are going to bring that frequency, with this now D12 coded frequency, bring it through into, we're going to the Vale of Pusey area. We're going to activate the gate 11 site, pulling the frequency through the Stonehenge grid, which will make it run through the Nibiru Dadic crystal grid, and it will recode it because D12 frequency is stronger than D11 frequency. So it will reverse it back to its natural pattern. This is what we have been trying to do since the EOMC period in 22,326 BC. That's what we tried to do there. Didn't work, but at least we got them where they didn't take over the whole place. But they've been progressively infiltrating ever since then, because they had half of the, the Giza spiral. Now, another time, there are several other times, this was tried in the Egyptian period, this was tried in Atlantis, but we didn't get it then either, like the period around the flood. What happened after the Lucifer rebellion, 25,500 BC period, and then the 22,326 BC EOMC massacre, was in 10,500 BC. Something called the Luciferian conquest began. Okay, this was an extension of the Luciferian rebellion, because there was enough guardian presence on the planet and enough assistance where the Sirius B guys could still come in and infiltrate. They didn't, the Anunnaki weren't able to get full control. They were progressively getting more and more control in Atlantis. Atlantis was becoming a real problem. After the Lucifer rebellion, a bunch of the Atlantean priests, king lines, the Grail king lines,